Hello everyone and welcome to this comprehensive guide to IELTS preparation. Whether you are aiming to pursue higher education abroad, enhance your career prospects, or simply prove your English proficiency, the IELTS exam is a vital step in your journey. In this extensive video, we have meticulously crafted 31 modules that cover every aspect of IELTS preparation, ensuring you have all the tools and knowledge you need to excel. From mastering the 4 language skills, listening, reading, writing and speaking, to understanding the exam format, time management techniques and effective strategies, we have left no stone unturned. Whether you are a beginner or someone seeking to fine-tune skills, our goal is to provide you with actionable insights and step-by-step guidance. So go through the complete course and get yourself ready to score a high band score. Ready to dive right into module 1? Let's go. Hi, this is Asta from GyanDhan and we are launching complete IELTS preparation course where I will help you through the preparation and will also tell you the hacks to score big in the test. This is the first video of the series. We will cover everything that you need to know about academic IELTS. So keep watching the series and make sure you hit the bell icon for regular updates. Let's start. First thing first, I will start with the introduction to IELTS. IELTS stands for International English Language Testing System, which is a standard English language proficiency test for the non-native English speakers or speakers of other languages. In India, it is currently managed by IDP Australia and Cambridge Assessment English. Now that you know what is IELTS, let's understand why you should take IELTS test. If you want to go to English speaking countries such as the US, the UK, Canada, New Zealand, etc. for further studies or permanent residence, you need to take the IELTS test first. There are 2 IELTS test types, general and academic. General training for those who are willing to work abroad or migrate. Academic IELTS is for students who desire to study in foreign universities and colleges. In this video series, I am going to focus on academic IELTS and all it includes. Let's learn more about the exam now. Listening and reading are receptive skills, as they involve receiving information. These 2 skill tests will check how well a candidate can understand written and verbal communication. The listening test will go on for 40 minutes, in which you will be required to listen to a set of recordings and at the same time you would need to answer questions asked in the booklet. Of course, based on those recordings, there will be 4 sections of parts to this test, each having a different scenario and audio type. Audios will be played and you will need to answer 40 questions in total. That means 10 questions from each section. You will be marked out of 40 and accordingly will be given a band. More on bands later in this video. Now, we have reading as our second skill. The academic reading test will go on for 60 minutes. It includes 3 passages and 40 questions. You just need to find out the answers to the questions from the passage. Just like how we used to do at our school. Comprehension, some of you might call it. Like the listening test, reading is also marked out of 40. And again, depending on how well you have scored, you get a band. Coming to our next set of modules, we have writing and speaking, which are productive skills, as they involve producing the language in the form of words, phrases, sentences, and so on. These skill tests will check how well you can write and speak. In academic writing, you need to write a report and an essay in 60 minutes. Report writing can involve data in the form of graphs, pie charts, tables, maps, line diagrams, flowchart, process diagrams, and so on. You need to analyze and select most important features from these visuals for your report. Essay writing questions, on the other hand, may ask for your opinion or may need you to list positive and negative aspects of a certain ongoing trend. Unlike the receptive skills, these tasks will be evaluated on the basis of 4 assessment criteria, which include task responses, coherence and cohesion, lexical resources, and grammatical range and accuracy. You would again be given bands out of 9 on the basis of how well you perform. Coming to our last skill, speaking. The IELTS speaking test will be conducted on a different day, WRL, which is writing, reading and listening, will be conducted together. But speaking test can be held 1 or 2 days before or after WRL. Speaking is the shortest skill test out of the 4. It usually goes on for only 11 to 14 minutes as per Cambridge guidelines. It includes 3 parts: the interview, cue card round and finally the discussion. You are not required to have any prior technical knowledge pertaining to a certain field, as questions and topics would be quite general. The speaking test would check your coherence, fluency, pronunciation, lexis and again grammatical range and accuracy. Based on your performance, you will get a band out of 9. Now, I have talked about all 4 IELTS modules, but some of you still might not be sure about the mechanics of getting bands. So here we are. Each module, writing, reading, listening and speaking, is marked out of 9. For instance, if you score 32 out of 40 in reading, you get band 7. For a higher band, you are required to score more. The overall band score is the average of what you will score in all 4 modules. For example, 7 in reading, 7 in listening, 6 in writing and 6 in speaking. So the overall band score will be 6.5. Remember, 9 here means you are an expert user and 1 a very limited user. So if you do well in the test, you might get something closer to 7 or 8, even 9 is possible. Welcome back to the IELTS video series. This is the second video of our series on complete IELTS preparation course. You can follow our channel and click on the bell icon to get a notification whenever we release the next video. So let's start. In this video, we are going to learn about the listening module, its exam structure, objective, duration and everything you need to know. The IELTS listening test goes on for 40 minutes, during which recordings will be played for 30 minutes and 10 minutes will be given to transfer answers from the question booklet into the answer sheet. In the listening test, you will be required to listen to 4 different recordings and answer questions based on those recordings. In other words, you will need to answer questions as you listen. The objective of this test is to check whether you will be able to understand native speakers or not. There will be a total of 4 parts and 40 questions in the test. Each part contains 10 questions varying in type. There will be no long answer questions. The question type includes gap filling in the form of notes, form, flowchart, sentence completion, multiple choice questions, short answer questions, map, classification and matching. Each correct answer gives you 1 point. The test is marked out of 40. There is no negative marking. You will be given some time to look at the questions before you listen to the recording. There will be an instructor in the audio who would guide you throughout the test. Also, headphones will be provided at the exam center as nobody would like to be disturbed during the test. Let's take a look at the 4 parts of the listening test. Each part contains 1 recording of a specific type. The speakers on the recordings can have British, American or Australian accent. If you face difficulty in understanding native speakers, you should try listening to podcasts or news channels. Even watching English movies would be of great help. As we move on from part 1 to part 4, the difficulty level of the test will increase. In other words, part 1 will be the easiest and part 4 the most difficult. But again, with the right guidance and enough practice, it won't be that challenging. In part 1 of the listening test, the audio will be of inquiry. And it is going to be a dialogue, which means yes, you will hear 2 people talking with each other. For instance, one person might be in need of some information. Let's say they want to know about details of a woodwork course at a local institute, or maybe someone who wants to book a room and needs information about the hotel. The other speaker would be giving all that information while conversing with the first person. Here in this example, the topic is Children's Engineering Workshop. So there is a high possibility that a parent would be calling the institute to inquire. So there will be a lot of questions and answers involved in the dialogue. You just need to listen to the conversation carefully and answer the questions involved. Part 2 of the listening test is a monologue. Only one person will be speaking and giving information about a certain place, building, area, heritage, culture, celebrity, and so on. Part 3 of the test is a conversation between students and may include a teacher too. It can have 2 to 4 speakers in total. The discussion topic will always be educational or academic. It could revolve around some science experiment, some project work, or maybe a theory. The final part of the listening test will be a monologue. It could be a lecture or speech in public interest. For instance, a politician addressing their people and making promises, or a doctor advising people on health issues, but the motive remains unchanged. Listen and answer the questions. Once all the parts are over, you will be given 10 minutes to transfer or copy your responses from the question booklet into the answer sheet. This is a very crucial part of the test, as the question booklets won't be marked. It doesn't matter what you wrote there. Also, make sure you copy the answers carefully with their correct spellings. Both British and American spellings are acceptable. For instance, color and color are spelled differently. Catalog and catalog. Even organize and organize. And there's a long list. But remember, wrong spellings will get you a 0 for that question, even if your answer was right. You will get a band depending on the number of answers you got correct. Here's the official Cambridge IELTS listening band score table. Anyone can understand how it works just by looking at it. Let's take an example. If you scored 34 out of 40, you will get a band 7.5. We welcome you back to our channel. In today's video, I am going to talk about the IELTS academic reading test. Before moving on, please follow our channel and click on the bell icon to get a notification whenever we release a new video. So let's start. The IELTS reading test is 60 minutes long, in which you will be required to look for answers to the questions from the given passages. Something which we used to do in school or college. Very basic, read, find and answer. In academic IELTS reading, you would need to answer 40 questions distributed between 3 passages within 60 minutes. You would also be asked to transfer your responses from the question booklet into the answer sheet, just like in the listening test. But the difference would be that no extra time is given for the transfer. Therefore, time management is the key here. Using the right technique for the right question is very important. The passages in the academic IELTS reading test can be based on a variety of topics, can be illustrated, can also be written in different styles. The length of these passages would be somewhere around 800 words, and the level of English would be upper, intermediate or advanced. Now, let's look at the question type which can be there in your reading test. You can be asked multiple choice questions, classification, matching, true false not given, labeling diagram, choosing a heading, short answer questions, locating information, sentence completion, identification of the writer's view, notes, table, flowchart completion and summary. Like in the listening test, in the reading test as well, you get 1 point for each correct answer and no points for an incorrect. So for 40 questions, you would be marked out of 40. There is no negative marking, so please make sure you attempt all the questions. The points are then converted into band scores based on how much you scored. Here is the band score table for academic IELTS reading. Please note that this table is different from the one which is used for grading the listening test. Now, here are a few tips for you. Always read the questions first. This is how you will know what to look for in the passage. Don't waste your time by reading the full passage. Remember, the aim is to find correct answers and not reading everything. Always keep a timer on while practicing reading tests to gauge your progress. Don't spend more than 15 to 18 minutes on a single passage and try to answer each question within 45 seconds. If you think a certain question is taking too long, circle it and move on. Attempt these circled questions in the later part of the test once you are done with the transfer. Be careful while copying answers. If spellings are wrong, you will not get a point even if the word is right. In the upcoming videos, we will learn and analyze different reading techniques to perform the task effectively and efficiently. Hello everyone, welcome back to our YouTube channel. Our IELTS series continues with another interesting video. Today, we are going to take the first step towards making our scores in IELTS writing better. So let's start. The IELTS academic writing test has 2 tasks, task 1 and task 2. Task 1 is report writing and task 2 is essay writing. 20 minutes and 40 minutes are given for task 1 and task 2 respectively. Clearly, task 1 is the shorter one, therefore lower the weightage. Today, we are going to discuss how to analyze IELTS academic writing task 1, report writing. This is an important skill for any IELTS test taker and we are going to show you how to do it quickly and effectively. We will take you through the process step by step, so you can develop the confidence to tackle any IELTS report writing task. So let's get started. In report writing, you are required to select and present key pieces of information from the given visuals. A minimum of 150 words should be written in the task in 20 minutes. The ideal word count is around 170 words. Make sure you don't exceed 200, that will make your writing too wordy. The visuals which one could get in the exam can be in the form of bar graphs, line graphs, pie charts, table, map, process diagram, flow chart, and even a combination graph. These illustrations can vary, but the objective would remain the same, which is to select and report data. Let's discuss this in detail now. You will be required to analyze the information in these visuals and then express the same in sentences. Here, you need to make sure you present information logically. The end result should be easily readable and should not be missing any key information or highlight. And now, time for the big question. How can I get a respectable band score in IELTS writing task 1? Well, you need to understand that one doesn't need to be a book writer in order to get decent band scores in writing. It's all about fulfilling the demands of the IELTS writing assessment criteria. If somebody works on these criteria, they can easily get the desired band. So, what's the criteria? Let's learn. Examiners who evaluate writings give a band score on the basis of 4 parameters. This parameter checks if the question has been answered properly, if all the key information has been reported in the writing correctly, if data presented is accurate, if vote count is above 150. If somebody wants to achieve a high score in task achievement, then all these requirements should be fulfilled. This parameter checks if paragraphing has been done well, if there is a logical organization of the ideas, if it's easy to follow what has been written. In other words, this criteria checks if the reader can understand the text well. The next parameter is lexical resources, which means vocabulary used in the task. You should be able to use a wide variety of words without much repetition, and the words should be used precisely to fit in a certain context. We have grammatical range and accuracy. As the name suggests, this assessment criteria checks the writer's grammar and their ability to construct a range of sentences. Let me put it this way, one should be able to communicate their ideas using the right tenses, sentence structures, and other items in their writing. Grammatical errors which distort or change the meaning of sentences are considered as severe mistakes. So, if you're not so confident about your grammar, start working on it. In a nutshell, these parameters decide what band you get. Since you're now familiar with the assessment criteria, let's move on and learn how the layout of the report writing task should be. We can make 3 or 4 paragraphs as per the requirement of the visual. Some teachers suggest making only 3 paragraphs, while others believe even 4 paras are fine. But just remember, whichever you follow, make sure your report is easy to understand, has an overall progression, and has ideas which are arranged logically. Here we have the report writing format with 3 paragraphs. First comes the introduction, which is quite obvious. The introduction should include the paraphrased version of the question. Now, some of you might wonder what paraphrasing is. Let me help you here. Paraphrasing is writing a given statement in a new way without changing its meaning, or paraphrasing means rephrasing or rewriting a sentence using different words and grammatical structure, but again, making sure that the meaning remains unchanged. The intro paragraph should have between 15 and 30 words. No other information is required here. Alright, so this makes our first paragraph, which is the introduction. In this paragraph, we need to present the most evident features of the visual. In other words, this tells the reader about the big picture of the data in the question. Ensure that you don't mention any numbers, figures, or percentage in this paragraph. The overview should not take more than 40 words. Then we have the body paragraphs. You are required to compare and contrast the important information and features depicted in the illustration. Remember, we don't need to talk about everything shown in the graph, chart, or table. Only the information which is quite unique, easily noticeable, and relevant should be included. Hello everyone, we are back with another interesting IELTS video. In today's video, we are going to take the next step in understanding the IELTS academic writing test. In the last video, we had learned the task 1 exam structure, layout, and the assessment criteria. In this video, I will be sharing my top tips and strategies to help you get the score you need in IELTS Academic Writing Task 2, Essay Writing. So if you want to learn how to write an essay that will impress the examiners, then this video is for you. As we already discussed in the previous video, the total duration of the IELTS writing test is 60 minutes, out of which candidates get 40 minutes for the essay writing task. Also, an important thing to note, IELTS Writing Task 2 carries more weightage than the Task 1. So it's natural that you spend more time practicing Task 2. Let's learn what exactly we need to do here. In this task, you are required to write an essay on a given topic in at least 250 words. So the word count should be somewhere between 260 and 290. Please make sure his essay isn't too wordy or lengthy. The essay topic will be generic in nature, which means no prior information is required before somebody can take the test. Some of the topics may include issues regarding today's education system, fashion and style, entertainment, changing habits of people, effects of social media, increasing environmental problems, travel and tourism, and so on. Remember, these are just a few examples of what you can get to write on as the list goes on. Let's talk about the requirements of these essay questions. The objective or objectives of task 2 may vary as we have a number of different essay types in IELTS writing. For instance, some essay questions may require you to present your opinion on a certain trend, or maybe a certain question wants you to list advantages and disadvantages of some contemporary events, trends, or actions. Here is the list of different essay questions types in IELTS. First is the IELTS opinion essay. The first part of the essay question will be a statement on a certain topic. The question may look like one of these. What is your opinion? Do you agree or disagree? To what extent do you agree or disagree? Here is an example of such essay question types. Exams should be made optional at schools. What is your opinion? Or exams should be made optional at schools. Do you agree or disagree? Exams should be made optional at schools. To what extent do you agree or disagree? Now, here what we have is an IELTS discussion essay. Some people believe that museums should be free for public while others oppose. Discuss both the views and give your opinion. For this question, test takers need to fulfill all three demands by discussing each opinion followed by briefly presenting what they believe. Next is IELTS problem solution essay. Here an example. Increasing population is a major concern in some parts of the world. What are the causes of this? How can the problem be solved? As we understand from this question, it clearly needs us to list both causes and solutions of increasing population. We could also get an IELTS advantage-disadvantage essay in exam. These days, many people prefer shopping online. What are the advantages and disadvantages of this trend? For this question type, there could also be a variation like this. These days, many people prefer shopping online. Do the advantages of shopping online outweigh its disadvantages? And finally, here is an example of IELTS direct or double question essay. In employment, some people work harder than others. Why is it so? Is it always good to work hard? So yes, you have got it right. We just need to answer the questions one at a time. You could get any one of these essay types in your exam. There is no such pattern to tell what type of essay you may get in the exam. So it's important that you practice writing all these types before you take the test. Also, as the task type differs, reading the question actively and understanding the demands of the question is very necessary before one starts writing. Like writing task 1, we also have certain parameters on the basis of which task 2 or IELTS essay writing is marked. So in order to secure a respectable band score in task 2, you must be aware of the parameters. These parameters quite resemble the one for task 1, but there are some differences, so make sure you don't miss them. The assessment criteria for task 2 is as presented. Task response. This parameter checks if you have answered all issues in the questions and to what extent. If relevant points have been included to support main ideas. If word count is above 250. If you want to achieve a high band score in task response, then make sure you read the question carefully. Present suitable ideas and do not write off topic. Then comes coherence and cohesion. This criteria checks if paragraphing has been done well and there are 4 to 5 paragraphs in your essay. If there is a logical organization of the ideas, if ideas have been linked naturally, if the paragraphs have a central or main idea. Make sure you don't end up writing opposing ideas in the same paragraph, as doing this could lower your score. Also, whether there is an overall progression in your writing or not. To simplify, your essay should have a flow. It should have a beginning and an evident end. The next parameter is lexical resources, which means vocabulary used in the task. Candidates should be able to use a wide variety of words without much repetition. And the words should be used precisely to fit in a certain context. Please note that Cambridge is not asking you to learn or use only highly proficient vocabulary items. Even common lexical resources with the right tone and register would work. Lexical resources checks if the vocabulary items used are related and appropriate to the topic, if there are any errors in word usage, if a range of words have been used, if there are any spelling errors. An important note, please avoid using informal language in essay writing, as this could impact your overall score. The last parameter is grammatical range and accuracy. This parameter checks the writer's grammar and their ability to construct a range of sentences accurately. Let me put it this way, one should be able to communicate their ideas using the right tenses, sentence structures, and other items in their writing. Grammatical errors which distort or change the meaning of sentences are considered as severe mistakes. The bottom line is, these parameters decide what band a candidate gets. Hello everyone, we have brought you yet another video which will help you and guide you to prepare for the IELTS exam. In this video, we will learn about the IELTS speaking test, how it is conducted, what question can be asked, and how band scores are given. So let's begin. The IELTS speaking test has 3 parts, part 1, 2 and 3. The total duration of the test is 11 to 14 minutes as per Cambridge guidelines. And yes, you guessed it right. The speaking test is the shortest of all the 4 tests. There are certain features which are unique to the speaking test. Number 1, speaking test is usually conducted on a different day. So your LRW, listening, reading and writing, will not be on the same day as the speaking test. It could be a day or 2 before or after the LRW test. If you're booking the IELTS test for the first time, please make sure you choose a suitable speaking day and time slot as soon as the window opens, or IDP will randomly assign you a day for the test. Number 2, it's a one-on-one test. So just you and the examiner are going to be a part of it. Number 3, although the band scores are decided by the examiner, pretty much once you are done with the test, the whole conversation is recorded. So if you see a recorder on the examiner's table, no need to worry or get nervous about it, because it's not for you. Remember, the recordings are done for quality purposes and to ensure that the IELTS speaking examiners are fair with the test takers. Now, let's learn about the structure of the exam. There are 3 parts in the IELTS speaking test, part 1, part 2 and part 3. Part 1 is the interview. In this section, the examiner would be asking you short answer questions based on familiar topics. The responses should be 2 to 3 sentences long. These questions could be about your hometown, family, food, restaurants, television, travel, social media, habits and so on. Part 1 or the interview goes on for about 4 to 5 minutes. Then comes part 2, the cue card. In this part, the examiner would be giving you a cue card with questions written on it. You need to speak on the given topic for 1 to 2 minutes. A 1 minute long preparation time is also given, when you could make some key notes. You can write during the preparation time and the stationery will be provided before part 2 begins. Remember, this is the only part where the interviewee gets to read the question in place of listening, gets time to prepare for the answer, is allowed to make keynotes to guide them as they speak. The test taker needs to address all the questions in their responses. The cue card round takes around 3 to 4 minutes. Part 3. This is the final part of the IELTS speaking test. This is also called the discussion round. The topic in part 3 is connected to the one in part 2. Here, you need to state your opinion, compare, predict, talk about the past, make speculations, and discuss habits of people in general. Examples of part 3 questions. Part 3 goes on for 4 to 5 minutes. This marks the end of the speaking test. Now, let's understand how bands are given in the IELTS speaking test. Candidates' performance is marked on the basis of 4 parameters, which are: this parameter checks how easy it is to follow the test taker. Also, it checks all the parts of the questions have been addressed in the sufficient detail and the ideas are linked naturally. Then comes pronunciation. As the name suggests, this criteria assesses the pronunciation or intelligibility of the speaker. In other words, the candidate's speech should be easy to understand or follow. Next, we have lexical resources. This checks if the candidate has used a wide variety of appropriate vocabulary items while answering the questions. Repeating words frequently could lower one's band score in this criteria. Finally comes grammatical range and accuracy. This parameter checks if the candidate is able to express their ideas using a range of sentence structures accurately. If somebody wants to get their desired band score in speaking, then they just need to work on these 4 parameters. Hello everyone, continuing with our IELTS series, we have another interesting video for you. In this video, we are going to talk about listening for specific information. So let's get started. In the previous IELTS listening video, you learnt about IELTS listening exam structure and band scores. If you haven't watched that video, please watch it first. As we have learned that there can be multiple types of questions in your IELTS listening exam, it is important to understand that these varying question types require different techniques to be answered effectively. Listening for specific information or data is one of those techniques which we are going to focus on today. Certain questions in the test will require a particular piece of information as their answers. These particular piece of information would not be very long and could include names, numbers, qualities, feelings, and so on. The length of the responses will be determined by the instructions given for each question you attempt. For instance, a gap-filling question may ask you to fill in the blanks with no more than 2 words. So, your response should either be in 1 or 2 words. Anything longer than that would be marked wrong. In order to answer these questions effectively, we need to use the technique called listening for specific information. So what exactly do we need to do in it? Well, for starters, make sure you listen for relevant and crucial information in the recordings. All that information in the form of words which is present in the questions is important. You just need to be aware of these words, and once the audio is played, try to listen for similar words and phrases as in the question. The answer which you need would be somewhere around there. If there is any number, name or date given in the question, then you should get super attentive once you hear them in the audio, as the answer must be nearby and you could hear that any moment. This question has 2 parts. First, we can see the aim, that's what we need to do, and second are the question statements. Now, step 1 is to read the objectives of the question carefully. In this case, we need to complete the notes on the basis of what we hear in the recording. But can we complete the notes using long sentences or phrases? No. Word limit is clearly mentioned in the question. Here, we are allowed to write only 1 word in each blank. Anything above 1 would be considered wrong. It doesn't matter if it contains the right answer. It would still be marked wrong. So please make sure that you read the instructions mindfully. The next step is to read the heading if there is one in the question. Headings help you establish a better idea of what exactly is going to be talked about in the audio. It helps you anticipate and prepare yourself for the audios. In this sample question, we have the heading Opportunities for Voluntary Work in Southo Village. So just by reading the heading, we got to know the audio is about somebody inquiring for some voluntary work in some Southo village. In the third step, we are going to analyze information given in the question statements. For that, we need to underline all the main words that we see. These main words usually could include nouns, verbs, adverbs and adjectives. We call them keywords. Never forget to underline or circle keywords before you listen to the audio. Grammar words such as articles, prepositions, helping verbs, etc. usually do not qualify as keywords. In this case, we have help, books and time to be arranged or time arranged as the keywords. Similarly, mark keywords in all the question statements. Now, it is time to listen to the audio. For demonstration, a small extract will be played for blank 1 only. Try to hear similar words for the keywords marked in statement 1.
Hello, Jane Fairbanks speaking.
Oh, good morning. My name's Frank Pritchard. I've just retired and moved to Southo. I'd like to become a volunteer, and I gather you coordinate voluntary work in the village.
That's right.
What sort of thing could I do?
Well, we need help with the village library. We borrow books from the town library, and individuals also donate them. So, one thing you could do is get involved in collecting them, if you've got a car, that is.
Yes, that's no problem.
Did you get the answer? Yes, you're right. It's collecting. Nice work if this was your answer too. Let's try the other two blanks now. Listen again for similar words in the audio. Here we go.
The times are pretty flexible, so we can arrange it to suit you. Another thing is the records that we keep of the books we're given, and those we borrow and need to return to the town library. It would be very useful to have another person to help keep them up to date.
Right. I'm used to working on a computer. I presume they're computerized?
Oh yes.
Is the library purpose-built? I haven't noticed it when I have walked around the village.
No, we simply have the use of a room in the village hall, the west room. It's on the left as you go in.
Let's check the answers. Were these your answers as well? Good job if they were. Practice the steps we learned today and you will surely get a decent score in listening. The same technique could be used to answer all these question types you can see here. Hi. It's time for another interesting IELTS video. In today's video, we have brought you ways and the right technique to use while attempting IELTS reading test. So let's get started. As in the previous video on IELTS listening, we learned that different questions type need different techniques to help answer them. The same applies to IELTS reading. And today, we are going to focus on reading for specific information, which is also known as scanning. You may ask what exactly is scanning? Well, the word scanning comes from scan, like a machine or robot scans. Similarly, we need to scan the reading text like a robot. In other words, we are not required to read everything in the passage. Instead, we just need to run our eyes over the text looking for some particular keywords or synonyms. After all, band scores in reading do not depend on how much you read, but on how many answers you get correct. And scanning will help you get better points and eventually more decent band scores. Now, why do we need to scan? Why can't we just read and get the answers? It isn't that difficult after all. Unfortunately, we have a shortage of time in the IELTS reading test. In this limited time, we need to look for the answers and we also need to transfer them into the answer sheet. Remember? And that's where scanning comes into play. It makes our life easier, it helps us save time, is easy to follow and is more effective. Scanning will get you better scores. That's why we need to use certain time-saving techniques such as scanning. Now, another question arises. How do we scan? No worries, we are going to teach you this with the help of an example. Here, on the screen you can see a sample IELTS reading. On the left, you can see a short passage on great white sharks. On the right, we have a question which we need to answer on the basis of our findings from the passage. Now, step 1 is to read the questions first. Candidates generally commit a big mistake by jumping straight onto the passage. Remember, IELTS will not mark you on the basis of how much you read, but on how many answers you get correct. Therefore, reading the passage first without an aim is a complete waste of time. We have just 60 minutes in hand and we need to use them efficiently. So, please make sure we should always read the questions first. Reading the question first will then give you an idea of what exactly you need to read for. Alright. Before we read the question, let's understand the various parts of the reading questions which are generally present. On the top, we can see the objective. That's what we need to do. For this question, we need to complete the sentences given below. Below that, we have the instructions. This part is very important as test takers sadly quite often fail to obey them. Here, for instance, the question wants us to write only one word to complete the sentences. In other words, anything above one word would be wrong. Even if those 2 or 3 words which you wrote had the right answer, it would still be marked wrong. So please be mindful about the word count, which will always be there in case of such gap-filling questions. And finally, we can see the question statement. This is what we need to answer on the basis of what we understand from the passage. Let's move on to step 2. At this stage, our primary focus would be the question statement. Now, while practicing reading, make sure you always have a pencil if you're going for a pen and paper test. Now, Underline or circle the keywords in the question statement. Keywords are the main words in the question which carry or influences the meaning. Keywords can often be nouns, verbs, adjectives, and adverbs. In this sample reading question, we have enormous, structured, and rose as keywords. Now, some of you ask why we did not consider the great white. It is also a noun and carries a meaning. Well, basically the entire passage is on great whites, so we are going to find it almost everywhere. So that's why we left it out. Step 3. Since we have a name now for reading, we have the keywords. Now we try to look for them in the passage. Now here's the catch. Cambridge isn't going to make the search operation that easy for you. So it's highly likely that most of the time we would need to look for synonyms or similar words for the keywords in the passage. So we need to keep an eye open for them as well. For example, we can have the word big, giant, or huge in the passage for the keyword enormous. Also, since we need to do the scanning to save time, make sure you do not read everything. Just run your eyes over and try to look for similar words in the passage. You can pause the video here if you want to scan for yourself. Okay. Now we have found words which mean the same as our keywords. They have been highlighted in green in the passage. So we have massive for enormous, positioned for structured, and rose for rose. I hope you were also able to spot these synonyms. If yes, then great job done. We have successfully identified the locations of these keywords. Now we just need to read the sentence containing our keywords to get the answer. And this would be step 4, the final step. You can pause the video here if you want to find the answer yourself first. And yes, you got it right. It's teeth. It fits in well with the question. Awesome work again. The same technique, scanning, can be used to deal with all these presented question types. Here are a few tips for you. Always read the questions first. Never forget the word count, if any. Scan your text. Don't dig in. Don't mark or underline too many keywords, as you will not be able to remember them all and you will get confused. Work on your vocabulary if you feel you should. Hello everyone, we have brought you a fresh video on IELTS Academic Writing Task 1. In this video, we are going to learn how to write an introduction to the report writing task. So let's begin. Here is a quick recap of what we learned in the last few videos. Report writing is the first and minor task in the academic writing test, which goes on for 20 minutes. And the objective is to report selected and relevant data which is represented in the visuals. So basically, we are required to express the numbers, figures or percentages depicted in the bar charts, line graphs and tables in sentences. And this is how we should format it. Remember, this is not the only layout which works for report writing. Some teachers might suggest different ones too. And also, paragraphing is done primarily on the basis of the features of the visuals. Let's learn how to start report writings. That is, writing the introduction. The first paragraph of the writing task 1 should include the paraphrased version of the question statement. But hold on, what is paraphrasing? What do we have to do in it? Well, it isn't that difficult to understand. In fact, it's fairly simple. Here is the definition. Paraphrasing is basically writing a given statement in a new way, maybe using different words or words which are similar to the ones mentioned in the question statement, or perhaps changing the sentence structure and rewriting it. But remember, the meaning of the original statement should not be impacted. The meaning should be the same even after making all those changes. Paraphrasing ensures that one has understood the meaning of the given discourse, and Cambridge would definitely like to see your level of comprehension and your ability to paraphrase. Let's understand how paraphrasing works with an example. And it would be great if you could grab a pen and a paper because we have an activity coming for you. Alright, so this is a sample report writing task. As we can see, we have a question given on the left and the data on the right. The presented visual is a bar graph depicting the percentage of UK citizens having different free time activities in 1979. Focusing on the question side now. There are 3 different parts to the question. On the top, we see the topic statement. This statement tells us what exactly is shown in the visual. In this case, the bar graph. On the top, we see the topic statement. This statement tells us what exactly is shown in the visual. In this case, the bar graph. So that's the topic. Then we have the objective. This statement tells us what exactly we need to do in the task. And finally, there is the instruction statement. We need to ensure that we write more than 150 words in this task. Now, for writing the introduction, we need to paraphrase the topic statement, which is now highlighted. We would suggest you to copy this statement in your notepad if you also want to participate in this activity. It's definitely going to be fun and you will learn better. Now, the statement reads, the chart shows the number of people pursuing different free time activities in the UK in 1979. We need to rewrite this sentence in a new way without changing its meaning. One way of doing so is by replacing the keywords in the sentence with their synonyms or word definitions. For those who don't know what keywords are the words which carry or influence the meaning of a sentence. Nouns, verbs, adjectives, and adverbs are commonly the keywords in a sentence. Let's pick the keywords from this topic statement and make a list of them. You can pause the video here and take your time, as this might take a couple of minutes to do so. Here are the words which we can use to replace the keywords. We can write bar graph in place of chart, as we saw a bar graph in the question. Represents or depicts could take the place of shows. Even gives information about can be written instead of shows. Then percentage sounds like a good replacement for the word number. Now, we understand that they are not the same, but remember, here they mean the unit used in the graph. And yes, the values in the graph in this sample question are in percentage. So we can go with percentage in place of number. We could write UK citizens replacing people in the UK. For pursuing, we can have many replacements, such as taking up, performing, or even spending time on. It's okay if you're not able to think of a precise synonym for every keyword. Remember, there's always a workaround, and word definitions do not seem like a bad choice. Just open up the word and you're good to go. Then, different could be changed by various very common vocabulary items. And finally, we can write leisure time activities or just leisure activities replacing free time activities. It's fine if your responses were different from the ones shown here. Always remember that there could be plenty or even countless ways in which you could replace a word. You just need to make sure that whatever you choose to replace with should not distort or contradict the original meaning. Now we are going to assemble those new words we wrote to rewrite this original statement. You can pause the video here if you wish to try that on your own first. So here is our paraphrase statement, the final product. It says the bar graph depicts the percentage of UK people performing various leisure activities in the year 1979. That's it. Paraphrasing done. And see, there is no change in the meaning. Both the statements mean absolutely the same. It isn't that hard to do after all. It just needs some practice. Also, we could change the sentence structure of the topic statement. That's another way to paraphrase. You can pause the video here if you want to change the paraphrase statement into passive voice. And here is what we get. The percentage of UK people performing various leisure activities in the year 1979 has been depicted by the bar graph. Again, the meaning did not change, but we changed the voice. And yes, the words. Well done if you were also able to change the statement structure using passive voice. So we now know how to write introductions to report writing tasks. Just paraphrase the topic statement. Here are a couple of statements if somebody wants to practice more paraphrasing. You can submit your responses in the comment section. That way we will be able to evaluate and help you get better. Hello everyone, we have brought you another video as a part of the ongoing IELTS series. In today's video, we are going to learn how to start writing essays. I think many good writers who are quite expressive, even they sometimes find it difficult to begin their writing. But no need to worry, as we are going to offer you a very effective solution that will help you start strong. So let's start. We learned in the past few videos that in academic IELTS, essay writing is the second writing task that goes on for 40 minutes. And the objective is to write on a given given topic, fulfilling all demands of the question. Now it's time to focus on how to structure your essays well. Organization and linking of ideas is an important aspect of writing. It should be easy for the reader to follow what you have conveyed. Therefore, following the right format is quite crucial. In IELTS essays, some question types may require 4 paragraphs to answer, whereas some might need 5. The number of paragraphs entirely depends on the essay question type. Here we have a rough essay layout for you, starting with an introduction, of course, followed by 2 body paragraphs, can be 3 depending on the question type, and ending with a conclusion or summary. Since we are going to learn how to start our essays, we will focus on the introductory paragraph today. The introduction comprises of 3 parts essentially. The first part is the paraphrased statement. We covered the topic paraphrasing in the previous video. Do watch it if you haven't yet. Nevertheless, we will take a look at its definition when we use it in this lesson too. Then comes the question reference. And finally, the paragraph ends with a thesis statement. It's okay if these terms are new to you and you don't get any of them. Let's understand what exactly we need to do. Here is a sample essay question. Some people believe that video games turn children violent. Do you agree or disagree? Let's write an introduction to this question. So here is what we will do first. We need to begin with a paraphrase statement. So paraphrasing is writing a given statement using different words or phrases in a new way, but making sure that its meaning remains intact. So for the first statement of the introduction, we need to paraphrase the topic sentence. The topic sentence reads, some people believe that video games turn children violent. Let's try writing this statement in some other way. You can pause the video here if you want to try it yourself first. Alright, so we have our paraphrase statement ready now. It goes, a set of individuals think that youngsters become aggressive by playing video games. There are countless other ways to paraphrase the same sentence. Maybe you could use perceive or claim in place of believe, a few individuals in place of some people. Similarly, the youth or young ones could replace children and so on. You could even make changes in the sentence structure by converting the active into a passive voice. It doesn't matter what way you opt to rephrase, but ensure that the meaning doesn't change or you do not unknowingly leave out any important piece of information, which is the question reference. Now, the question reference will be determined by the task given in the question. Here, for example, the question is asking whether we agree or disagree. So our task is to state what we believe or what side are we on, agree or disagree, and build up on that information in the next paragraphs. So always refer to the demand of the question, or we can call it the task of the question. Now, here for instance, we have framed the sentence, I disagree with the notion. Some of you might agree with the idea in the question and it is totally fine. Remember, it is up to you which side of the fence you are on. Just write your opinion here clearly. Having said that, an important note. We need to understand that certain essay question types will not have question references in the first paragraph, since they follow a slightly different layout. You will be learning about those exceptions in the upcoming videos. After the question reference, we have the final statement to add, which is the thesis statement. The thesis statement gives an overview of what we are going to or what we have written further. Just like in presentations, the speaker gives an outline of the presentation before getting into the details of the agenda. So in this case, we are going to explain our position or opinion in the next paragraphs, and that is what we need to mention here. Here is a sample thesis statement for you. My position has been elaborated in the following paragraphs. Or we could also write, my opinion or perception or premise has been explained or elucidated further. Never forget, there are multiple ways to express these 3 parts of the introduction. First, paraphrase statement. Second, question reference. And third, the thesis statement. If you ardently follow this structure, you end up writing a lucid and coherent intro without difficulties. At the same time, giving you decent points in the parameters, task response, coherence and cohesion. On a different note, make sure your intro isn't too wordy. Try writing it within 25 to 40 words. Here are some practice essay questions for you. Try writing introductions in the same fashion for them. Don't forget to share your work in the comment section. Hope you found this video helpful. We will keep on bringing such useful content to make IELTS easy for you. Hello everyone, here we are with yet another informative video lesson on the IELTS exam. Today we are going to look at IELTS speaking part 1 and all you need to know about it. So let's start. As learned in the previous videos, we know that the IELTS speaking test is the shortest test of all 4 modules, which takes around 11 to 14 minutes only. It is a one-on-one conversation with an IELTS speaking interviewer and the candidate. We also learned that the speaking test comprises of 3 parts which contains various question types. Part 1, also called the interview, goes on for about 4 to 5 minutes, in which the examiner asks questions on familiar topics such as TV, shopping, eating habits, friends and family, festivals, study or work, entertainment, etc. These questions are very easy to answer, and anyone after some practice can become an expert in this round. The responses to these questions should be short but convincing. One does not need to dig into details in this round. 2 to 3 sentences of answers are enough for each question. But why is this part called the interview? That's because the questions in part 1 revolves around the candidate. This part contains personal questions on familiar topics, and that's why you would usually find the word you in questions. For example, what TV show do you like the most? Why? Do you like spending time with your family? Why or why not? Have you ever been abroad? It is recommended to state a reason for every answer. And if the examiner specifically adds why or why not to the question, it is very important to tell why. For instance, do you like shopping? Why or why not? Are you active on social media? Why or why not? Answer to these questions without a reason would be inadequate, since the candidate did not fulfill all the demands of the question. On a side note, even if a reason is given, make sure that your response is not longer than 2 or 3 lines. Let's take a look at some sample part 1 questions and answer. The question reads, how do you usually travel? You can pause the video if you want to try answering the question yourself first. Alright, this is one way to answer this question. Mostly I travel by metro because it's inexpensive and comfortable. It saves me time too. And that's it. Wasn't a big deal, right? You may have had a different answer or opinion, and it's totally fine. There can be countless responses to this question. Whatever the response is, just make sure it is relevant and answers all part of the question. Let's move on. The next question is, what type of books do you like the most? Why? Try answering this question yourself first. Books that fill me with optimism, good character and innovation are at the top of my list. So biographies and science fiction are my first preferences. Wasn't that hard? And we even gave a reason for our choice. Here's another one. How do you spend your leisure time? You can pause the video if you want to try answering it first. Here is a sample response now. I usually watch web series on my phone, and sometimes I go out with my friends. That's how I spend my free time. It's okay if you struggle with these questions. Some good practice and our guidance will help you bridge the gap. Now, a few points to remember. What if somebody didn't pay much attention to the question? Will they still get a good band? Well, if one didn't listen or understand the question properly, they wouldn't be able to respond well. Consequently, they might not get their desired band score. Therefore, active listening is very vital in speaking test. After listening and understanding comes speaking. Ensure that the answer you provide addresses all part of the question. Look at this question. How often do you watch television? We have been given 2 possible answers to the same question. Which one do you think is suitable? You may want to pause the video here and choose an option. Yes, that's right. Answer number 2 fits the question well, whereas answer 1 doesn't. Although answer 1 is in the same topic TV, but it doesn't satisfy the question needs. And that's exactly how active listening plays a salient role in speaking. Hence, ensure that you listen well. Answer every aspect of the question. Never make assumptions if you didn't hear the examiner well on the first go. You can always say pardon to politely ask them to repeat the question for you. One important note, using pardon will not affect your band score in any way. So please don't be hesitant in saying that. Maintain fluency and coherence. That's the first parameter that decides your overall speaking score. Make sure your ideas are linked logically and are easy to follow. Do not use too many fillers or take pauses. Practice well before you take the test. And yes, repeating ideas will definitely affect your score. Then comes pronunciation. While practicing, check pronunciation on reliable websites such as Cambridge or Oxford Dictionary. Google is not recommended for IELTS preparation. The third parameter is lexical resources. Try using a variety of vocabulary items in your answer, but use them because you need them, not because you know them. Too much repetition of lexical items may reflect lack of expression, so make sure you enhance your word power well before the test. And finally, we have grammar. Try using a variety of sentence structures such as simple, complex. This would showcase your conversational ability. The usage should be accurate. Once you have worked on all these aspects, you're all set for the speaking test and to get your desired band scores. In conclusion, fewer the errors, the higher your band score is. And remember, practice is the key. Hello everyone, welcome back to IELTS series. In today's video, we are going to learn how to introduce range of grammar in your language. Let's get started. In the previous videos, we got to know that IELTS writing and speaking are assessed based on 4 parameters. One of the common parameters is the grammatical range and accuracy. This parameter checks to what extent the test taker can use a variety of grammatical structures naturally and accurately. That is why it is quite important to display a range in your language. Your band scores rely considerably on how well the usage is. So how do we introduce grammatical range? In this video, we are going to teach you a few structures which you could add to your knowledge. First, we need to look at clauses. What is a clause? A clause is primarily a group of words that contains at least a subject, a verb, or both. Any phrase or group of words containing any of these is called a clause. Let's take a look at this sample sentence. It contains a subject and a verb. Jerry is a subject and plays the verb. Therefore, we can label it as a clause. Here's another example. Kiara teaches math on Monday. Kiara is a subject and teaches the verb. Therefore, it can be called a clause too. Each clause carries one idea. And we know that simple sentence contain only one idea too. Hence, a single clause equals a simple sentence. Let's take structures to the next level now. Here's structure type 2. The sentence reads, I like apples, but she prefers oranges. In this sentence, we have got 2 subjects and 2 verbs. I and she are the subjects, whereas like and prefers are the verbs. So basically, 2 pairs of subject and verb. As per the definition of clause, there are 2 clauses present in this sentence. I like apples is clause number 1 and she prefers oranges is clause number 2. That means this sentence containing 2 clauses conveys 2 different ideas. Apart from the clauses, we have but, which is acting as a bridge between these clauses. It is called a connector or conjunction. It is coordinating conjunction to be precise, as there is coordination between these 2 ideas. And there can only be coordination when the ideas carry equal importance. My liking for apples is as important as her preference for oranges. We have no superior or inferior idea in this structure. That's why we use coordinating conjunctions to connect such ideas. Here is the acronym FANBOYS, which will help you remember the list of coordinating conjunctions. Here, F means for, A stands for and, N stands for nor, B is for but, O is for or, Y is for yet, and S is so. Any of these conjunctions could be used to connect ideas of equal importance. Now, it is time for some analysis. We are considering the same sentence for this stage too. To begin the analysis, let's focus only on the first clause, I like apples, and imagine as if the rest of the sentence does not exist. For now, the sentence ends at apples. Does this sentence seem grammatically accurate to you? Is it still meaningful? Is it still complete? Well, yes, it is. The sentence I like apples is indeed meaningful, complete, and grammatically correct. That is why we can call it an independent clause. Such a clause does not depend on any other clause or phrase to sound sensible, complete, and grammatically fine. Similarly, the second clause, she prefers oranges, is independent too. You can pause the video here to check it yourself using the below mentioned conditions in the highlighted box. Now, this is what we have gathered from the analysis. Structure 2 comprises 2 independent clauses connected by a coordinating conjunction. Such a structure is called compound sentence structure. You may want to practice this structure using the FANBOYS conjunctions. We have got another structure for you to learn. The sample sentence reads, I stayed home because my granny was ill. Once again, we have two pairs of subject and verb. I and my granny are the subjects and stayed and was are the verbs used in this sentence. So as per the definition of clauses, we have two clauses in this sentence too. I stayed home makes the first clause and because my granny was ill is the second clause. And yes, we have because as subordinating conjunction. More on subordinating conjunctions later. Time for some analysis again. We have picked the same sentence for this analysis as well. Let's break the sentence and focus only on the first clause, I stayed home. Once again, imagine that the sentence ends here. Does this sentence looks okay to you? Is it grammatically correct? Complete? Meaningful? You can pause the video here if you need some time to think. Well, yes. This clause fulfills all those conditions and that is why it is safe to call it independent. Let's now focus on the second clause. Because my granny was ill. What about this one now? Is it complete or incomplete? Is it grammatically acceptable? Does it have a full meaning? What are your views on this one? You can pause the video here and take your time. Yes, you are correct. It doesn't fulfill any of those conditions. It does not carry a full meaning or is complete and is definitely not grammatically acceptable. Such clauses are called dependent clauses. They always need the support of an independent clause to sound meaningful. Therefore, these two ideas are not equal in importance too. The first clause or the first idea is superior. You can call it the main idea. And in order to connect ideas of varying importance, we need subordinating conjunctions. Because is an example. Here are a few subordinating conjunctions which we can use to join independent and dependent clauses. Even relative pronouns can be used. This is what we have gathered from our analysis. In this structure, there is the usage of an independent clause, a dependent clause, and a subordinating conjunction. Such structures are known as complex sentence structures. You can try making complex sentences using the subordinating conjunctions provided. So I guess that's it. We have learned how to introduce a range in speaking and writing using a variety of sentence structures. But remember, the key is to practice these structures so you could become natural and perfect at using them. Hello everyone, today we have brought you yet another helpful IELTS video lesson and the focus would be on the listening module. So let's start. There are a number of question types in the IELTS listening test and different techniques are required to answer them efficiently. In the last IELTS listening video, we learned listening for specific information. In this video, we will learn how to listen for gist. Let's first look at the things we need to do as we implement this technique. We need to listen for central idea or the main idea of the extract. In other words, this technique helps us to understand the overall meaning of the extract. It gives us the big picture. And at the same time, we need to be patient. There could be many distractors used in the audio which could make the test taker think differently and eventually decide otherwise. It is very common for the speakers to change their opinion or the answers at the last moment. So we need to be very careful and patient with our selections. Now, what not to do? Avoid listening to every single detail in the audio when the question could be answered using the listening for gist technique. Remember, the big picture or the overview will get you the right answer, not some minute details such as numbers or dates. Another important don't is to skip the words you are not familiar with. If you ever come across or hear a word for the first time, don't start thinking about its possible meaning. Remember, these are distractors and speed bumps. If one pays too much attention to these unknown lexical items, one can easily lose the track of the audio and eventually missing responses to a couple of subsequent questions. Concentration is the key to the IELTS listening test. Focus on the central idea and not on any specific information. These tips would be very helpful to you in the exam. Don't forget to follow them as you practice. We have already learned that test takers are given sufficient time to read the questions before they hear the recording. Making the best use of the pre-listening time can have a significant impact on your band score. Let's look at the steps we need to follow in this technique. Here is a sample question to demonstrate the efficacy of the technique. The first part of the question is the aim. We need to choose the correct letter, A, B or C. It is a multiple choice question. MCQs can require specific information or gist in order to answer them. This one presented here requires the test taker to make a selection based on the central idea of the extract. The first step is to read the instructions carefully. Second, read the heading if there is one. Once you read the heading, don't forget to predict what could be there in the audio on the same subject. Predicting helps you prepare yourself mentally for the context, resulting in better outcomes. In this sample question, we have the heading Presentation about refrigeration. From the heading, we could derive that there is going to be a conversation about freezing stuff or refrigeration. The next step is to read the question statement. What did Annie discover from reading about ice houses? Annie, discover, reading and ice houses are the keywords. 3 options have been given for this particular question. Important note, never read the options before you listen. But why not? How will we know the answer then? There are many reasons for ignoring the options. Firstly, if you read the options first, you will not be able to retain all that information in the question statement and the options collectively. You may miss out on important information in the audio since you flooded your mind with a lot of not so required keywords. Secondly, reading options with the question statement may confuse you while listening. Remember, Cambridge is not going to make that easy questions for you. Each option in the question will be discussed in the audio, which could be very perplexing if you had been anticipating having options already read. Your focus should always be on the question statement and what keywords it contains. Repeat the process with all the question statements in the given task. As we have followed all the pre-listening steps, let's listen. We are going to hide the options for you so you could better concentrate on the main statement. In exam, you could use your palm to hide the options.
Okay, Jack. Before we plan our presentation about refrigeration, let's discuss what we have discovered so far.
Fine, Annie. Though I have to admit I haven't done much research yet.
Nor me. But I found an interesting article about ice houses. I had seen some 18th and 19th century ones here and in the UK, so I knew they were often built in a shady area or underground, close to lakes that might freeze in the winter. Then, blocks of ice could be cut and stored in the ice house. But I didn't realize that insulating the blocks with straw or sawdust meant they didn't melt for months. The ancient Romans had refrigeration too.
I didn't know that.
Alright, we have heard the extract which contains the response to this question. Now it's time to reflect on what we heard, rethink and recall what Annie mentioned. Choose the most suitable option. You can pause the video if you want, but it should not take more than 5 seconds. And yes, you are right. Option B is the correct answer. Annie found that Romans could keep the ice without melting for months with the use of straws or sawdust. That matches clearly with option B, how the ice was kept frozen. This technique is very effective and helpful but requires practice. Because of course the audio won't be waiting for you, it has to be done within seconds. And yes, you must have got a fair idea that nothing works without practice in IELTS. So maybe you should get to work. These questions can be answered using the same technique. Hello everyone, we are back with yet another exciting and informative video for you as part of the ongoing IELTS video series. In this video, we are going to understand the importance of skimming in the IELTS reading test and how to effectively use it. So let's start. We know the objective of IELTS reading is to find the answers from the given passage, which are quite generic. Various question types require different techniques. The techniques which we are going to discuss today is skimming, or we can also call it reading for gist. Gist is basically the main idea or the central idea of the passage or paragraph. Specific details or specifications do not matter if a question demands the main idea. Such reading for gist question checks one's overall understanding of a given text. But a question arises. We could also simply read the text and get its main idea. Then why do we need to skim? Well, for starters, IELTS is not really generous with time. We have quite a shortage of it. Therefore, we need to use it efficiently. Skimming does the job for us. It's time-saving, easy to implement, and helps you find answers with great efficacy. And now we have the answer. That is why we need to skim. Now, let's move on and learn how to properly skim the passages to answer certain questions. Remember, this technique is helpful only for some question type. Other questions may require scanning more than skimming. To help you understand the technique, let's take an example. You can see a reading sample here. The objective of the question is on your right on the screen, which says match the following paragraphs with the most suitable heading from the box. Also, we have 4 paragraphs in the question. Make sure you read only those paragraphs in the question, not the others. And yes, we can see a list of headings given on the left. You may have noticed that we have more headings than paragraphs in the question. This would be a very common case in your practice test and actual assessment. So please don't expect an equal number of headings as paragraphs. Brace yourself to skip trickery. Let's start the procedure now. Step 1 is to read the question statement and then check the first paragraph of the question. It is paragraph B in this case, so we will read or skim paragraph B, not paragraph A first. Candidates could end up wasting time reading paragraphs that are not in the question. So please ensure you read the question task carefully. Now, here's a tip. Avoid reading the headings first. But why exactly? Shouldn't we be familiar with the headings before we go ahead? I mean, how would we know what heading matches with what paragraph? This is the most common mistake which test takers make. They try reading and absorbing all the information which is mentioned in the headings, which is practically not feasible. You can't possibly retain so much data in just one go. And to make matters worse, reading headings first could actually confuse you as you skim the paragraph. So better stay away from the headings before you skim any paragraph. This is paragraph B. We have now hidden the headings to help you concentrate easily on the text. Let's skim this paragraph. Remember, skimming is done by quickly reading the text. Try to understand what is written on the whole. Don't focus on specific or very particular details as they are of no use to you for this question. Also, if you come across any uncommon lexical item or vocabulary, just skip it and read further. Remember, these not so usual words act as speed bumps that are sprinkled all over the passage to slow you down or confuse you. Our primary objective should be to understand this paragraph overall. You can now pause the video to read the text. Read? Good job. Now we need to be patient here and not rush to check the headings because it's time to do some reflection. Please try to reflect or recall what exactly you read in the text. Just try to express it in a few words or a sentence. You could take a few seconds if you want. That is what we needed. Okay, did you get it? Now that is your main idea. That is what we needed. So now we are back to the headings. The technique is to check your main idea with each of the headings here and not to get easily satisfied. Remember, it's all about being patient and having a good presence of mind. Take your time and match the gist with every heading starting right from the top. Please don't skip any heading or rush to match even if you see a resembling keyword in it. Don't forget, we have extra headings in this box and IELTS will definitely try to trick you with at least one of them. So again, stay composed and check. It is advised to always have a pencil when you practice reading. You could then easily mark or circle possibly correct responses. Sometimes you may not be able to spot or identify the right heading for a given paragraph. It's okay not to worry about it. You could do the elimination stage in that case. Just strike off the headings which are no way closer to your main idea. This way, you would be able to narrow down to possibly correct answers. You can now pause the video to look at the headings. And yes, you're right. Good job. The second heading, new method of research, correctly matches the central idea of this paragraph. We could see the writer mentioning the new study which was conducted by incorporating real spoken English. A few tips for you. These questions could be answered using the same technique. Remember, it's all about practice, which will help you master all the techniques. Hello viewers and IELTS aspirants. Welcome to another video in this IELTS video lesson series. In this video, we are going to shed light on a very important aspect of writing, which is improving coherence with the help of discourse markers. So let's start. What are discourse markers exactly? Well, some of you may have heard of them and it's okay if you have no clue what they mean. We are here to help you. So basically, discourse markers are used for signposting. Just like on the road, we see a number of road signs which help a great deal with knowing how we should be driving. For example, what should be the speed? If there is a U-turn allowed, or if there is a school ahead. All these signs indicate and help the driver prepare beforehand. Similarly, discourse markers help the listener or the reader understand the organization, the flow, and the transition of ideas in your text. So, the definition would be that they are actually a glue that helps link the ideas well. That's why we could also call them linkers. Using these linkers, the correct type at the right time could in fact enhance your articulation. They could boost your coherence and make it easy for the reader to follow your item. They add clarity and a desired flow to your ideas. Just using the correct type of discourse marker can increase your reader's level of comprehension and make your language more coherent than ever. Now, discourse markers could be of various types. Each type has its own specific and unique function. Let's take a look at some of the most useful and helpful types of discourse markers. Here is an example. Oshika is intelligent, but she is lazy. This is a compound sentence as we learned in the previous grammatical range video. Try reading this sentence aloud. What do you observe? The moment we say but or here but, we get the idea. Now, the writer is talking about the exact opposite of what they had said earlier. Do you see that? The discourse marker but is enforcing a transition in ideas from talking about Oshika's good quality to her negative quality. That's the beauty of discourse markers. They are enabling us to talk about contradicting ideas so smoothly. And of course, that's one of the functions. Linking contradicting ideas. Here we have a list of discourse markers that can help connect opposite views. The second function is adding similar ideas. In your essay report, there will be so many instances where you would want to add multiple ideas on the same subject. So, how do we do it? Here is an illustration. He walks and looks after his family. Yes, you guessed right. And here is the discourse marker responsible for adding similar ideas. But this was quite a basic example. What if we need to connect more such ideas? Of course, we can't be using and all the time. That would be too much repetition. So here's a list of discourse markers that we can use in place of and. The next function is sequencing ideas. These discourse markers would assist in writing body paragraphs and process writing primarily. Logical ordering of ideas will be indicated by this kind. For instance, mobile phones have several features. Firstly, we could make video calls using them. Secondly, now here, firstly and secondly are indicating the sequence of ideas, also the number of ideas. There are more discourse markers that we can use for sequencing ideas. Then comes highlighting ideas. There would be many instances where you may want to emphasize a particular idea or concept among all ideas in your writing. These discourse markers will come in handy then. For example, the authorities need to work on many sectors, especially health and education. In this case, the word specially is laying stress on the following idea. It is helping that a certain idea stands out among all others. Here are the discourse markers which we can use to highlight or focus on particular ideas or notions. Another useful function of discourse markers is that they also help us state reasons for the arguments we make in our writing. We have a sentence here to help you understand it better. It goes, since he didn't obey the rules, he was penalized. The cohesive device since indicates the reason for a certain subsequent action. We could say, he was penalized since he didn't obey the rules. These are the discourse markers for reasoning. You could use any of them for this function. The next function is giving examples. You may want to provide evidence for the supporting ideas you include specially in your essays. And that's why we would need these discourse markers. Here are the linkers which we can use in place of the very commonly used, for example, and when all is done, you would be required to conclude your essays. A conclusion or summary is mandatory in every essay you write. Your essays would be incomplete without them. That's why the discourse markers for conclusions should be in our knowledge. Here is an example. To sum up, the internet has more benefits than drawbacks. Here are some concluding linkers you should know. Alright, so I guess we are done now. We learned all the basic discourse markers which we should know and be able to use naturally and appropriately. Now, a few tips. Remember, not to flood your writings with discourse markers. Too many of them could drop the quality of your language too. Your writing may turn out to look mechanical and not natural at all. To give you an estimate, 4 to 5 discourse markers at the right places are desired in essay writing, not more than that. Also, use the discourse markers because the idea demands them, not to brag about your lexical power. This could backfire as well. And like always, grasping every concept would need some time and practice. So don't shy away from making an effort. For this video lesson, we are happy to provide you with an absolutely free of cost takeaway PDF containing list of discourse markers that we share today. You can access them by clicking the link in the video description. Hello viewers, we welcome you back to our channel. We are back with yet another exciting video of IELTS series. In today's video, we are going to learn a few vocabulary items which we can use in writing task 1 of the academic IELTS test. So let's start. As we know that in academic IELTS writing task 1, you need to describe the data which is presented in visuals in your own words. Framing sentences to report the numbers, percentages, figures, proportions or even processes in the question. We learned in the previous video that you could get any type of visual to report in the exam. Here is what you might get to report. You may get a bar graph, line graph, pie chart, flow chart, table, map, processes or combination graph. But again, the objective remains the same. Analyze the data, select the key and most important information and finally write those down in form of sentences. Having a decent knowledge of appropriate vocabulary items will certainly help you report the task well. Not only this, but vocabulary also known as lexical items will also help you compare and contrast the figures, talk about trends and above all will keep you away from repeating the exact same words. This in turn will largely help you boost your IELTS band score and upscale your level of language. Now, let's take a look at the lexical resources which can beautify our writing, making it more expressive and articulate at the same time. First, let's talk about increasing trends or numbers. In the case of bar graphs and the line graphs, you might observe some upward trends. To report such movements in the graph, using the word increase repeatedly might affect your band score. So here is what we can replace increase with. If the increase is quite rapid, we could say the numbers jumped or the figures doubled. Use this only when the numbers actually doubled. We could also go with the word rocketed and so on. In case of a slow increase, we could use the terms an upward trend or a gradual increase can be observed. If the inclination is neither rapid nor slow, we could use that items under neutral. The numbers climbed, went up, rose or increased simply would work fine. Next, we have decreasing trends. If you observe numbers lowering or going down in the illustration, the presented lexical items can be used. In case of a fast decrease, we could say the value of shares collapsed. The numbers plummeted or plunged. If the decline is quite gradual, dipped, slumped and descending trend would function the best. If the decrease is neither fast nor slow, declined, fell and reduced could be of use. You could use any of these words to report the data as per your observations. Now, there is a possibility that a graph may contain data that fluctuates a lot or is changing frequently. No clear upward or downward trend is evident. We call such data as fluctuating. To report the ups and downs, you could say that the number of house owners charged occasionally over a period of 7 years. For instance, changed intermittently, moved erratically, numbers fluctuated, an irregular trend could be seen. Too many rises and falls work just as fine. It's up to you which you want to use. Just make sure that your usage of such vocabulary items does not distort the information depicted in the visual. That could backfire. Now, how to talk about graphs with sort of constant data or figures which remained almost the same? Here's what you could use. The percentage of female students going to college remained static from 2011 to 2018. Remained constant, the same, leveled out, plateau and percentages remained unchanged, could serve the same purpose. So, this is how you could talk about varying trends shown in the illustration. Now, let's move on and enhance our word knowledge by adding some useful adjectives and adverbs for your task 1 questions. If you come across some big numbers, let's say in the given data, rather than using basic vocabulary, try going with considerable or considerably the adverb. Here is an example. A considerable number of males joined the gym in the year 2007. Which one sounds more appealing and better to you? Of course, the second one. And we did nothing much. Just replaced big with considerable. That's how significantly vocabulary items can enhance your language skills. Similarly, talking about moderate numbers, changes, or movements in the data could be done using these lexical items. And finally, if you observe anything noticeably minute or slow but constant, go with the word steady or ceaseless. It's going to be very common while practicing or taking the real test that you see figures or values in the data which are not exact or a little hazy. Rather than making assumptions, that would be a very wrong idea. Go with the words of approximation. Since the data isn't revealing the exact figures, you should convey the same to the reader of your item. It is absolutely fine to use words such as around when figures aren't lucid. You could also use about, almost, roughly, and approximately. A few tips as you put these words into practice. Make sure you don't use them unnecessarily and end up making your report too wordy. These will just increase the word count, which not be healthy for your writing. Also, use them only when you need them, not because you know them. And like always, practice is the key. Hope you found today's video helpful and informative. We are providing you a free of cost takeaway PDF containing all the lexical items we learned today. You just need to click the link in the description below. Hello viewers, we welcome you once again to our channel and we have brought you yet another helpful IELTS video lesson on how to write overview and academic IELTS writing task 1. So let's get started. A quick recap in case somebody missed watching the previous videos. Academic writing task 1 is report writing which goes on for 20 minutes. In this task, an illustration is provided and the objective is to report the main features of the presented data. So basically putting the data which comprises figures, values, percentages, numbers into words. This is the report writing task layout that we discussed in one of the last videos. And today our focus is going to be the overview. So what is an overview? An overview is basically the summary of what you see in the visual. It doesn't comprise meticulous details or some specific information. It gives the reader a bird's eye view of the data. Just a glance at the illustration could help the writer understand what elements to include in the overview. An overview should include the primary features consisting of drastic changes or movements in a graph. Could be the number of stages in a process, outstanding figures or values in a table, or noticeable trends in a line graph. Here the test takers are required to mention the overall increase or decrease in numbers. Sometimes the visuals such as graphs could have fluctuating numbers, so they would make a decent addition to the overview. High or low points, if there is a table or pie chart in the question, should be mentioned. The same applies to the highest and lowest value. For your convenience, we have gathered a few linkers which you could use to begin writing the overview. These include overall, as a general trend, on the whole, and it is evident that you could use any of these. Of course, the list goes on and there are many more substitutions you could find on the internet. But since you just need to write one overview, keeping in mind so many of them would just flood your memory unnecessarily. Here we have a sample writing task 1 question to help you understand overviews better. We have chosen the same question we used for writing the introduction in the last writing task 1 video for your ease. And it's okay if you haven't watched the previous videos either. On the left here, we can see the question and on the right lies the visual which is a graph. There are different parts of the report writing question. On the left here, we can see the question and on the right lies the visual which is a graph. There are different parts of the report writing question. First, we can see the topic statement which reads, the chart shows the number of people pursuing different free time activities in the UK in 1979. Then comes the objective, which is to summarize and report the given data, followed by instructions that tell the word count. For writing an overview, step 1 is to understand the topic statement, to understand what the visual is about. So here we are talking about the different free time activities pursued by people in the UK in the year 1979. The next step is to take a glance at the visual and make relevant selection. Remember, here we do not need to delve into the details or numbers. Just an overall understanding of the graph would help. Look for the unique features only, such as the highest or lowest figures. So do you see anything like that in the visual? You can pause the video here if you need to. Alright, here's what we found. The highest chunk of the UK population liked watching television, whereas singing was the least common hobby in 1979. This is a sample overview for the same question. Overall, watching television was the most popular free time activity, while the least percentage of UK citizens preferred singing as their hobby in the year 1979. Quite simple, isn't it? We just talked about the highest and lowest figures here. Also, few points to note. Please make sure that you don't include or mention any figures or values in the overview. Also, the word count should not be more than 30. Overviews are meant to be short and crisp. This table here will give you a clear idea of what to mention while writing overviews for different visuals. In the case of bar charts or line graphs, increasing, decreasing or fluctuating trends should be reported. For tabular illustrations, high and low points or any changes if time isn't constant should be talked about. Changes over time or any visible additions or removals should be mentioned if there is a map question. Stages for process writing and the largest and smallest proportions for pie chart would suffice. Please ensure that at least 2 to 4 observations are included in the overview. Yes, and without numbers. Guess you now know how to write overviews for your writing task 1 question. So maybe it's practice time for you now. Hello everyone, we are back with another super exciting and informative video on the IELTS exam as a part of the ongoing IELTS video lesson series. In today's video, we are going to learn how to write body paragraphs in essays. So let's start. In the previous essay writing video, we learned how to write an introduction and what elements to include in the first paragraph. If you haven't watched that video, maybe you should watch it first. In this video, we are going to take a step forward and will understand how we can write effective body paragraph for writing task 2, which could fetch you a decent band score in writing. The format of the essays depends on the type of essay questions, as we have already discussed. Some question types could be answered using 4 paras, while some might need 5 to be sufficiently answered. You might ask, how would we know how many paras to write, isn't it? Well, at the moment, you should not worry about it, since we are going to cover that topic as well in our upcoming videos, where we will provide you with a sentence by sentence layout of essay questions. So for now, all you need to focus on is to understand how bodies are written. As we can see here, in the case of a 4 para essay, there would be only 2 body paragraphs. Each body paragraph should be written within 90 to 110 words. But when it comes to 5 para essays, body paras will increase to 3. However, the word count will drop to just 60 to 70 words each. Such adjustments in the word count have to be done, since the overall word count doesn't change and sticks to strictly above 250 and below 300. Now, here is how we write a good body paragraph. Some teachers might have different labels for the sentences to be included in this para, but the elements remain the same. We begin a body, or you could call it content, by presenting a topic statement. The topic statement comes from, yes, you thought that right. It comes from the topic which is in the question. You don't have to add anything from your own here, apart from language variety. Make sure that you don't copy the question exactly. Rephrasing is a must. Topic statements give the reader a clear idea of the subject of a particular body paragraph. Then comes a linker or discourse marker. We did one video on discourse markers too. If you haven't watched it yet, maybe you could watch it later. After that, supporting ideas to be added to the paragraph. These are in fact arguments that support the main topic statement of the paragraph. These have to come from the writer's knowledge and creative thinking. Relevant and strong supporting ideas can fetch you more bands than the not so related ones. Good idea generation is another key to scoring well in IELTS. And finally, we write the evidence. This basically illustrates the presented argument and helps the reader understand how the corresponding notion would be practical in the real world. Remember that the example you state is impersonal. It has to be generic in nature. Since the register of the essay is formal, that should be reflected throughout your writing. Here is one vital piece of information. Always remember that one body para can have only one central idea. Body paragraphs cannot have multiple central ideas in any case. Doing so will compromise the internal and overall coherence of your writer, as including opposing or different ideas in the same paragraph would make it difficult for the reader or examiner to follow your thought process. Okay, so now let's dig in and understand with the help of a sample essay question. The question reads, fast food is now easily available in most countries. Some people say that this is a positive trend while others oppose. Discuss both the views and give your opinion. How many ideas do you see in this essay question? You may read the question again if you need to. Yes, you are right. There are two ideas in this question. Some people say the availability of fast food is a good change. This is the idea or view 1. Other people say that it is a bad change. Is idea 2 or view 2. The objective of the question is to discuss both views and state our opinion. Each view would be elaborated on in one body paragraph. They can be talked about together, otherwise that would kill the overall progression of the writer. The writer's opinion would go in the last paragraph, which is the conclusion. We will learn how to write a conclusion in the next essay writing video. For better understanding, let's put each view against its body paragraph. In body 1, the central idea would be decent availability of fast food is a positive change. And for body 2, it will be decent availability of fast food is a negative change. Let's write body 1. The topic statement would be what we just said. We have a couple of linkers that we could choose from to begin our arguments for the main idea. Then we will mention our arguments or reasons. You could write 2 to 3 supporting ideas in each body para, and in the end, an example to better explain the reason mentioned. Let's read a sample body paragraph. Okay, so this is how we began with the topic statement. Just rephrase the central idea from the question. Let's move on. Supporting idea 1. Good argument to support the main idea. Now comes supporting idea 2. Another reason for this notion. Now let's add an example here to better explain this. And that's that. This sample contains just over 90 words. Of course, you could include any other reasons or arguments. It all depends on the way you think and the way you want to express yourself. There is no one correct answer. But whatever you write, make sure it doesn't go off the track. The response must be according to the question. So, as we have learned how to do body paragraphs in essay writing, maybe now it's your turn to write one too. Body 2 for the same question with a highlighted idea would be a perfect start to begin writing elaborate responses. Try writing on your own and you could submit your response in the comment section. Hello everyone, we are back with another exciting video as a part of our ongoing IELTS video lesson series. In today's video, we are going to learn about IELTS Speaking Part 2, that is cue card, and how to answer this question. So let's start. The IELTS speaking test, as we all know, is the shortest of all 4 modules, which goes on for only 11 to 14 minutes as per Cambridge guidelines. There are 3 parts in the IELTS speaking test. Part 1 is the interview round, Part 2 is the cue card, and Part 3 is the discussion. In the previous IELTS speaking video, we learnt about Part 1, the interview round, and how to deal with questions in it. If you haven't watched that video yet, please find the link to that video in the description. You may want to watch it later. In this video, we will focus on the Part 2 cue card. The cue card round lasts for 3 to 4 minutes. It's quite brief as we can get that from the duration it goes on for. In this part, the candidate needs to speak on the given topic for 1 to 2 minutes. Candidates get exactly 1 minute to think about what they are going to say. Candidates can prepare keynotes if they want during the preparation time to assist them as they speak. This is the only part of the IELTS speaking test where the test takers don't have to listen to this question, as a hard copy of the cue card will be provided with a question on it. They just need to read to understand the demands of the question. During the 1 minute preparation time, as mentioned before, candidates can make keynotes too. There will be sheets of paper and pencils available on the test table as you enter the examination room. Candidates can make use of it during this part. Also, a timer will be set and watched actively to calculate your preparation and speaking time. The cue card round specifically checks the test taker's ability to describe events, activities, people, personalities, places, feelings and past experiences. It checks if the candidate is able to speak at length, and also the relevance of idea is observed. Now, let's take a look at a sample cue card question to understand the requirements of this part well. The question here reads, talk about a person who knows a lot. Please say who it is, how you know them, when you realized they know a lot, and explain how you feel when they talk. Cue card questions have two parts. First, we have the topic. Here in this case, we need to speak about somebody who knows a lot. Then we can see 4 internal questions. These questions actually make a job easier, since now we don't need to think from scratch. We already have been given a framework for the response. We simply need to answer these questions one at a time, and the job will be done. One important thing to understand here, make sure that these questions are to be answered in the sequence they are presented, or the speech will end up sounding incoherent and confusing. Also, since we need to speak for 1 to 2 minutes only, we must make sure that we don't speak for less than a minute and even not more than 2 minutes. The examiner will ask the candidate to stop speaking when 2 minutes are over. So if somebody was not able to accommodate all 4 questions in those 2 minutes, that could badly impact the overall speaking band scores. Hence, with the help of some good practice, speaking for right between 1 and 2 minutes won't be a problem. Now, let's try answering this question. In the test, you will be getting a minute to prepare the response, and that's when you would make keynotes. Keynotes are basically pieces of key information that you might want to include in your final response. Since you can't write full sentences in your keynotes due to strict time constraints, making bullet points and using abbreviations would be the best possible way to do it. Nobody would check what keynotes you make. So if they make sense to you, they are good enough. Now, let's hear a sample response to this question. I have met many knowledgeable people in my life. Today, I am going to talk about a person who knows a lot about automobiles. His name is Anurag Sharma. He is none other than one of my close cousins. We used to spend a lot of time playing when we were kids. Originally, he is from a small town in Gujarat, but his family moved to Germany 5 years ago. So now, he lives in Germany with his parents. Anurag works as an executive car designer at BMW, a renowned automobile company. He was appointed to the car company's head office in Germany in the year 2018. He completed his Bachelor of Technology in Mechanical Engineering from Harvard University in 2015. I feel that Anurag is a towering intellectual. I hadn't realized that he had such in-depth knowledge until one day I video called him to exchange pleasantries. On the phone, I happened to tell him about our old car and my dad's plan to buy a new one for the family, and that's exactly when he gobsmacked me with his deep knowledge of car engines, which really helped us choose our next car. Unquestionably, the credit for this goes to the time when he would burn the midnight oil studying various disciplines of mechanical engineering. Another reason why I think he's brilliant is that he is an active learner. Normally, when anyone starts working, they don't pay attention to improving their knowledge or skills. But this is not the case with Anurag. He is always willing to expand his knowledge and learn new skills. He often reads magazines and attends seminars to keep him updated with the latest technology. All these things make him different from others. I can't stop admiring him. He's a role model for me. Hope this gave you some idea on how to answer cue cards. This response lasted for more than a minute, which is just right. Remember, it's about active reading, good note making, and including all the questions in your answer. Now, a few points to remember. Ensure that you read well. Misreading could cause big damage to your scores. Answer every aspect of the question. Also, make sure that you don't spend too much time on just one question. Time management is another vital skill required here. Maintain fluency and coherence. That's the first parameter that decides your overall speaking score. Make sure your ideas are linked logically and are easy to follow. Do not use too many fillers or pauses. Practice well before you take the test. And yes, repeating ideas will definitely affect your score. Then comes pronunciation. While practicing, check pronunciation on reliable websites such as Cambridge or Oxford Dictionary. Google is not recommended for IELTS preparation. The third parameter is lexical resources. Try using a variety of vocabulary items in your answer. But as we say, use them because you need them, not because you know them. Too much repetition of lexical items may reflect a lack of expression, so make sure you enhance your word power well before the test. And finally, we have grammar. Try using a variety of sentence structures such as simple, complex. This would showcase your conversational ability. The usage should be accurate. Practice speaking at length. Many free sample cue card questions are available for practice all over the internet. Once you have worked on all these aspects, you're all set for the speaking test and to get your desired band scores. In conclusion, fewer the errors, the higher your band score is. And remember, practice is the key. Here is a cue card question for you. Try speaking on your own and don't forget to time yourself. Hello and welcome back. Once again, we are here to help you with your IELTS exam preparation. In today's video, we are going to focus on pronunciation and how it impacts the speaking band score. So let's start. As we have learned in this IELTS video lesson series that the IELTS speaking assessment is marked based on 4 criteria, we have already gained knowledge about fluency and coherence, lexical resources and grammatical range and accuracy in the previous videos. You can watch those videos if you haven't yet. In this video, we are going to learn about pronunciation as a parameter and what it all includes. All 4 criteria have equal importance and role in deciding the band score for each candidate. In other words, pronunciation carries 25% weightage in the assessment and therefore cannot be neglected. You might think it's just about pronouncing words correctly. Well, that is just a little part of it. This parameter checks way more than that. Let's learn. To commence with, it checks if individual sounds are clearly produced. According to the International Phonetic Alphabet, there are 44 sounds in the English language. These sounds should be crystal clear and enunciated using the right manner if somebody is aiming for a higher band score such as 7 or 8. Having said that, there is still no need to be pedantic about them since certain sounds in this chart that belong to English are not present in the local Indian languages. In that case, it is absolutely fine to use alternatives in place of them as long as they don't distort the pronunciation or make the words sound incomprehensible. Candidates who have high mother tongue influence, short form MTI, they might find this chart helpful for correction of those sounds. But remember, if you are able to produce vowel sounds and consonant sounds such as S and Z, clearly you don't need to bother yourself much. Here is a list of few commonly mispronounced words. Pause the video here if you want to pronounce them yourself first before listening to the correct enunciation. Here is how we pronounce them. Pronunciation: Wednesday, cough, elite, mischievous, probably. Whenever you come across any word you find difficult to pronounce, just look for its perfect pronunciation in either Cambridge or Oxford Dictionary. You could follow either UK British English or US American English pronunciation as they both are standard and acceptable in IELTS. Whichever you follow, just make sure you follow that throughout as mixtures are not desired. Let's move on. The pronunciation parameter also checks connected speech. As we speak naturally, at certain times, sounds of the tail of a word merge with the sounds at the beginning of the subsequent word. This happens automatically and we may not realize it as this process takes place too fast. Therefore, no gap is left between the words and a good flow of speech is established. This is called connected speech. If a candidate is taking pause right after every word they say, then they might need to correct their connected speech. There are various types of connected speech: catenation, intrusion, elision, assimilation, and germinates. We will not delve into the technicalities, but here is an example to help you understand how this works. This type is catenation. In this case, it depicts consonant and vowel linking. The first example is this apple. If you say this apple slowly without a gap between them, you might notice something weird. Well, the consonant sound S at the end of this is merging with the S sound at the start of apple, making it sound more like this apple. Interesting, isn't it? Let's try again. This time we have cool it. Try to speak cool it slowly and observe what comes out. That's right, it sounds like cool-lit. Now let's try with a longer sentence. She took it and threw it away. You can pause the video if you want to try it first. And this is how it sounds when spoken naturally. She took it and threw it away. It became a completely new sentence. Now the next thing which is checked by this parameter is the word and sentence stress. Very important. What is the word stress? Well, to get that, we first need to understand that English is not strong phonetically. That means to say that the pronunciation doesn't really depend on the spelling of the words, and that is the biggest problem. That's why we have dictionaries for checking the right pronunciation. There is no other way around, as patterns do not stick for long. There are always more exceptions, and that is the beauty of English. Here is an example to show how word stress is unpredictable, yet helps pronounce the word correctly. The first word is photograph. Here the syllable pho is stressed, or we can say that we sort of stretched it more. Now for the next word, if we stressed pho again, the pronunciation would go wrong. We need to stress to here. Photography. Similar spellings but a considerable change in production. Then photographer. To is stressed again. And finally, photographic. Gra is stressed. Word stress plays around and we need to understand that. The only way to know where to stress is by listening to the correct pronunciation and imitating it multiple times. Make sure you get your pronunciation from reliable sources such as Cambridge or Oxford Dictionary only. Sentence stress. Stress also plays a role in sentence. Stressing different words at different times may alter their overall meaning. Let's understand with the help of an example. The sentence reads, I didn't ask you to fold the sheets. This means I didn't ask you, I had asked somebody else to fold the sheets. Let's stress some other words now in the same sentence and see how that changes the meaning. I didn't ask you to fold the sheets. I had in fact asked you to iron them. We must use sentence stress wisely as we just saw its effect on sentences. Chunking is also checked by this parameter. Chunking is about taking the right pauses at the right time. This helps highlight the key elements in your speech and also gives sufficient time to the listener to gather and digest the already given data. It also creates a dramatic effect on the audience. Nobody would want a speaker to speak continuously without a break. Turns out pauses have a positive trait too when used in the right places. Finally comes intonation. The rise and fall in tone is called intonation. If there is no rise and fall, we would sound like Alexa or Google Assistant. In other words, if the intonation is flat, the speech sounds robotic, and nobody would like to sound like that. Somebody, the intonation rises and other times it falls. It all depends on what you are saying. Here are a couple of examples. Are you thirsty? Intonation goes up. Is she a new teacher? Intonation goes up again. We have reached the destination. Now it goes down. Where does he live? And down again. In most cases, test takers don't need to fiddle with their intonation as they already sound fine. If you're facing difficulties with intonation, maybe you should watch some TV shows or movies and listen carefully to how dialogues are delivered in different situations. That will give you a fair idea. Alright, that's all that pronunciation checks. In a nutshell, just make sure that you sound clear and comprehensive, and people don't find difficulty following you as you speak. With this video, we are giving away a free takeaway self-study PDF which contains a number of words that are mispronounced by a good deal of speakers around the world. Try them out and verify them from a reliable source. Hello everyone, we have once again brought you more useful content on how to crack IELTS with the desired band scores. In today's video, we are going to talk about the importance of spelling in the test, and we'll learn about how spellings could differ in American and British English. So let's start. Spelling in the IELTS exam would be important in two modules, which are listening and writing. In the reading test, the candidates will be anyway copying the spellings from the passage. And in speaking, of course, you would only be speaking. In the listening test, since the text will be in the form of audio, there will be no support for spelling words correctly. You will listen to the recordings and write the answer. Make sure you spell the words correctly. Even if you got the right answer from the audio, but you spelled that wrong, you won't be getting any points for that. Well, turns out Cambridge is quite strict when it comes to spelling words. So, in short, wrong spelling equals to incorrect answer, which equals 0 point in that question. Further, in the writing test, candidates need to write elaborate responses, which makes it highly likely for the test takers to commit spelling errors in this module. Too many spelling mistakes could drop the level of comprehensibility and create problems for the reader. Since the write-up could not be easily understood or followed, this would adversely affect the overall writing band score. Poor spelling can surely do a lot of damage. Here is how. If there are 4 major spelling errors in your writing task, then half a band will be deducted. If the number goes up, the deductions do too. More mistakes, lower bands. That is why we cannot overlook our spelling issues and we must work on them before taking the test. Here is a list of few words which are commonly misspelled. You might find them helpful. Let's learn a little about British and American English now and how they may affect how words are spelled. There is in fact a clear distinction between British and American English. It exists in the form of different sounding accents, pronunciation, vocabulary, spellings and even grammar. Narrowing down to spellings, we have a long list of words that are differently spelled. For instance, the very common confusion between color and color. C-O-L-O-R is the American way and C-O-L-O-U-R is British. Luckily, we have some patterns which help us to check whether a word is spelled in the US or UK English. This first pattern contains the usage of a Z and an S. In American English, the word organizer is spelled with a Z, whereas it is spelled with an S in British English. The same applies to words such as specialized, characterize, analyze, agonize, apologize, and the list doesn't end here. There are several words which are spelled differently this way. So if it's a Z in such words, it is US, and if it's an S, it's British. Then there is OR and OUR pattern. The word armor is spelled ARMOR in American, while in British it becomes ARMOUR. Similar patterns could be seen in spelling of humor, behavior, flavor, favorite, rumor, labor, and so on. OR for America and OUR for British. Another interesting pattern comes with the swapping of letters R and E. Words such as center are spelled with E first, followed by R in American English, and the reverse is the case when it comes to British English. In British, we have R first and E follows. Kilometer, theatre, liter, luster, meager, maneuver, and many more show the same trend in UK and US English. Sometimes additional letters make changes in the spelling. For instance, epilogue comes with an UE in the end in British English, making it spelled EPILOGUE. On the other hand, in American English, there is no UE at the tail of this word. This additional UE also changes words such as catalog, dialogue, and check. Here are a few more words that don't look the same in UK and US dictionaries. Program and program with an extra ME at the end. Raveling and marvelous with a single L in the US and double L in the UK. Practice with a C in the US and an S in UK. Such patterns make it look easy to understand how to identify which word belongs to which dictionary. But this gives rise to another question. Which spelling should we use in IELTS? British or American? Here is answer. IELTS stands for International English Language Testing System. It says international, not British or American only. So both British and American English spellings are considered standard and acceptable. You can write color with or without a U in it. That's not a problem. Cambridge acknowledges both of them. The only condition here is to follow either of them. You can choose between American and British. If you're following, for example, British for one word, then all your words should be in British. The same goes for American English. There should be uniformity in your language in both listening and writing tests, as mixtures are not desired. In a nutshell, make sure your spellings are correct and you can follow either UK or US spelling, whichever you like. And don't forget to proofread what you have written so you don't lose points just because of some silly spelling mistakes. And like always we say, practice is the key. We are giving away a free takeaway PDF for self-study along with this video containing what we just learned. Hello and welcome back. We are here once again to provide you with more useful content and help on how to clear the IELTS exam with decent bands. In this video, we are going to learn how to choose the right technique to deal with questions in the reading module. So let's start. As in the previous videos, we have learned that the IELTS reading test is about finding answers to the questions from the given passage. Just like comprehension exercises we used to do in school. Since there are different question types in the reading assessment, the same technique doesn't quite work well for all of them. Specific questions need specific techniques to be answered. These techniques include scanning and skimming. We also took a few examples in the previously aired videos what these techniques mean and how they work. Let's do a quick refresher on why we need them and how we can use them effectively. We require these special ways to find answers as we are on a very strict timeline when it comes to the reading test. All 40 questions are to be answered within 60 minutes. Therefore, these techniques emerged as quite helpful owing to the fact that they help us save time during the test. Also, they can be easily used and often cut down on the boring text we may have to read if techniques weren't there. And of course, they have high efficacy. But how will we know which one to choose for which question? Should we do scanning or skimming for a certain question? The answer lies in the definition. Let's quickly compare them. Scanning, as the name suggests, allows us to scan text like a robot. We simply need to run our eyes over the passage without actually understanding it. The objective here is to locate certain keywords from the questions in the text. So scanning helps us when we need specific information. This technique requires selective reading. Since not everything is read, we end up saving a good deal of time. On the other hand, we have skimming. This is quite the opposite of what scanning is about. Using this technique, we rapidly read the entire text. This is done to extract the gist of the paragraph or certain section. It doesn't help us find specific information since we don't target keywords, but we got to focus more on the overall meaning that the writer is trying to convey. Once skimming is done, we must give ourselves a few seconds to reflect on what we just read. Reflection is a key stage as this is exactly when and where you would get to know the central idea. Some questions in the reading assessment require the central idea, and that's exactly where skimming comes in handy. Both these techniques are super helpful and unique in their own way. It's all about what the question demands, which one we choose, and how sincerely we implement them. Now, let's do a little exercise to practice choosing the right technique for a question. On the screen, you can see an MCQ and there is the associated paragraph from the text on the right of it. Since we all know that the objective of MCQs is to select the right option, let's focus more on the question statement. It reads, in the first paragraph, the writer makes a point that, and what comes next, we need to find that. The statement clearly states that the answer has to be the overall point that the writer has made in the first paragraph. In other words, this question is demanding the main idea of the first paragraph. So when we need a central idea, which technique should we use? Yes, that's correct. We should use skimming. We just need to read rapidly and understand the gist of the para. But before we begin reading, please try to keep your eyes off the options. As we have already discussed in the previous reading videos, it would be a bad idea to read the options along with the questions before going through the text. Doing this will only confuse you since you won't be able to retain so much information, and reading options first might also influence a decision while choosing one of them. So we must refrain from reading the options first. Okay, I guess we can now skim read through the paragraph. We have zoomed in for your ease. You can pause the video here. Just for your reference, the ideal skimming time for this paragraph would be under 15 seconds. Alright, now skimming is done. Please reflect on what you just read. You can pause here if you want. Now, it's time to read the options and choose the one which matches our reflection. That would be the central idea. Option A, the director should plan the soundtrack at an early stage in filming. Was there anything about planning sounds early in the paragraph? No, there wasn't even a bit. So this option stands wrong. We can strike it off. Option B, it is important for those working on the sound in a film to have a sole responsibility for it. Do you think this is correct? The responsibility of sound is also of the director, not just the people in the sound, as mentioned explicitly in the 4th line. Therefore, this statement goes wrong too. So we can strike this option off too. Option C, it would be wrong to overlook the contribution of sound to the artistry of films. Did the paragraph say anything about considering sound effects less valuable? Well, that's a big yes. In fact, the entire paragraph was about it, right from the first sentence. Hope you got option C as your answer too. It's okay if you didn't. Techniques usually take a little time to get hold of. There can be certain questions of the same format which may require more than one reading technique to be answered. This question right here is another MCQ. Once again, we would only read the question statement and not the options. The question goes, what does the writer suggest about bringing up baby? Which technique according to you should be suitable to tackle this question? As a matter of fact, this question demands a combination. First, we need to look at bringing up baby in the full passage, and when we look for specific information, we do scanning. That's right, we will just run our eyes over the text and trying to find bringing up baby. We would find it exactly the same since it's a proper noun. So that's another advantage here. Once we have located the keyword in the passage, we would have narrowed down the reading section to just a few sentences. And that's where the next technique will be put into use. We then just need to read around the term bringing up baby to understand what the writer suggests about it. So which technique should be used at this stage? That's right, we will now skim that narrowed down section, and after reflection, we would be ready to choose between the options. Hence, this is how certain questions could be dealt with such combination techniques. It's okay if you're a little puzzled as of now. After a good amount of practice, you won't face much difficulty in deciding which method to go with. And wonderful job if you have already grasped the idea. So maybe now it's time for you to try some reading test and put the techniques into practice. Hello and welcome everyone. We are here again with another helpful video for you as a part of our ongoing IELTS video lesson series. And today's video is going to be all about vocabulary, as we will focus on the parameter lexical resources. So here we go. The parameter lexical resources is a score determining factor in both speaking and writing tests. This criteria play quite a major role in assessing one's language skills and knowledge, as it determines 25% of the total score. This assessment criteria checks if the candidate is able to convey their ideas freely and without much difficulty. Also, it marks test takers based on how flexibly they can explain premises verbally and non-verbally. Knowledge and usage of different word classes with ease can just as well fetch someone decent scores in this parameter. It further checks if the candidate can use a variety of language items naturally. Also, if one is aiming for higher band scores such as 7 or 8 or above, they should display natural usage of uncommon words in their language. While all these features could help test takers get a boost in their overall scores, repetitions could unfortunately do the opposite. Using the same words over and over again can impact the scores badly, as this shows the limitations of one's language skills. Let's learn why repetition is such an undesirable trait. IELTS speaking parts 2 and 3 as well as writing tasks demand elicited responses containing relevant premises. The right words are quite essential to state one's views on a subject without leaving doubt behind. Without sufficient knowledge of lexical items, the speaker or writer will have no option but to repeatedly use the little vault of the familiar vocabulary. This also shows a candidate's lack of exposure to the language, inability to express what they have on their mind, and poor articulation of ideas. One's band scores can be severely affected if there is too much repetition. But there's always a solution to every problem, and this one has to. Let's take a look together and learn how we can get rid of repetitions. Here in this table, the language type desired in the speaking and writing test is compared. In the case of speaking, the tone and register of the test taker can be friendly and they may sound informal. If somebody wants to secure a respectable band, they could incorporate the usage of idioms. Not too many of them though, but a couple should suffice. Also make sure that the idioms you use are quite common among native speakers. Phrasal verbs could also be made good use of in the speaking test. If somebody wants to sound native-like, then phrasal verbs will prove as a nice add-on. Move on, get away with, and show up are a few examples of phrasal verbs. Speakers should use informal linkers to connect their ideas as they speak, since tone and register must be uniform throughout the response. Next, we can display some collocations as well. What are collocations? Well, in simple words, words that go together are collocations. For example, we say heavy rain. We never say fast rain or strong rain. So heavy rain, words that go together is an example of collocation. Finally, we can widely use synonyms to avoid repetitions in speech, the easiest way out. On the other hand, the register and tone in the writing test have to be strictly formal. Collocations and formal linkers should be pragmatically sprinkled naturally over the write. If somebody hasn't watched the videos we did on linkers and discourse markers, then please do watch it. And as mentioned earlier, synonyms are sort of anti-repetition, which could instantly help one upgrade their language level. Let's take a look at a few synonyms which you can use in your language too. We have compiled a list of the most commonly used words here to make the job easy for you. Let's commence with the word say, as in some people say. In place of say, we can go with believe, assert, affirm, to be of the opinion, opine, and perceive. They would do the same work as say would. The second word is important. I guess we all use it a lot. So what could be its replacement? Well, we can use bejo, key, vital, significant, salient, essential, and crucial. And as you can see, these words aren't uncommon. We are familiar with all of them. The only thing is that we need to refresh them in our memory and transfer these from our passive knowledge to active knowledge so that they could stay on the top of our heads. And then we have people. Would look very nice if we kept on using the word people everywhere. We could replace that with public, common people, general public, and society. Next we have big. A basic word such as big doesn't really have the power to fetch you a high band. Instead, use huge, mammoth, humongous, gigantic, monumental, and colossal. Small can be replaced by little, minute, tiny, minuscule, microscopic, and nominal. Make sure you make a choice between these on the basis of the degree and intensity of the small you wish to depict. In place of many, we could say or write a lot of. A lots of or lot of would be incorrect. Plenty of, plethora of, a good amount of, ample, and several are some more substitutes for many. Then comes information, which means data, details, knowledge, and a piece of information. You can keep switching between these synonyms to reduce the scope of repetition. Words similar to idea include notion, premise, perception, belief, and point of view or viewpoint. These are interchanged like the previous word list. Another common word that is commonly repeated is benefits. Instead of benefits, advantages, pros, perks, upsides, and merits could be used. And now the opposite, drawbacks could be replaced by disadvantages, downsides, demerits, cons, and limitations. Once again, it is clear that these vocabulary items are in the common knowledge, yet test takers tend to forget using them. Then we have the word method, way, methodology, technique, and procedure would work just as fine when used in the right context. And then there would be instances where you would need to discuss your or somebody else's agreement. So here is how to agree without using the word agree. You could simply go with the phrases to feel the same, to be of the same mind, to support, and to favor. Such easy to use phrases are enough to make your language look and sound graceful when used appropriately. Likewise, here is how to present disagreement. Use to feel differently, to oppose, to differ from, and to protest. Essay questions usually contain a problematic trend, situation, or element. In such questions, sometimes it becomes quite a challenge to escape repetition. But thankfully, here is the key. Here is what you can use of instead. Say issue, trials and tribulations, conundrum, predicament, trouble, and challenge whenever you feel like repeating the word problem. And if you talk about problems, you may also need to suggest solutions. Here is what we can use instead of the word solution: resolution, remedy, and cure. Learning the vocabulary of any language is a never-ending process. We try to provide a bunch of useful lexes to help you with your exam preparation. In fact, you can take this learning ahead yourself by reading novels or newspaper articles regularly. And yes, the internet always stands as your best support. We have a few tips for you since you will be expanding your word power. Use them because you need them, not because you know them. And read as much as you can. Along with this video, we are giving away a free takeaway PDF which contains all the synonyms we looked at today. Hello everyone, we have brought you another exciting and helpful video on IELTS writing. In this video, we are going to help you write body paragraphs for academic IELTS writing task 1, that is report writing. So let's start. The objective of the report writing task is to present the visual data in the form of a short write-up. In the previous videos, we learned how to write an introduction and overview paragraph for task 1. If you haven't watched those videos yet, please do watch them. In today's video, our focus will be body paragraphs, which involve comparing and contrasting important features depicted in the illustrations. Writing body is a meticulous process and requires a number of well-executed stages. The ideal word count for both bodies should be 90 to 110 combined. The first 3 stages assist us with planning the report. Stage 1 is to make observations. In this step, we need to scrutinize details such as the theme of the data, such as the topic on which the data is presented. We also need to keep the years mentioned in mind and the number of entities shown. Then comes stage 2. At this stage, we select the most important features depicted in the visual. Remember, the data can be quite comprehensive at times. Remember, our job is to pick information that stands out from the rest. Common figures or values should be less talked about in the write-up. Stage 3 involves the distribution of data, especially when there is a combination graph question. We need to divide data between bodies analytically. Let's say we could talk about similarities in body 1 and differences in body 2 or vice versa. Either is acceptable as long as the writing is coherent. The last stage is where we actually pen down the data shown in visuals. On an important note, please ensure that you don't include any ideas or inferences from your own. No personal opinions or ideas have to be added. Just write what you see in the graphs. Hope you understood the stages well. We will perform a sample writing task using these stages for better understanding in a moment. From the stages, we have also learned what an ideal body paragraph should contain. It must have all the important features of the graph or table. Numbers cannot be missed. They must be compared and contrasted. Now it is time to write. Here is a sample writing task 1 with the subject on the left and illustrations on the right. Let's follow the steps we learned. Let's observe and understand the subject as per stage 1. The topic reads, the charts below show the percentage of water used for different purposes in 6 areas of the world. And our task is to summarize the information by reporting the most important features presented. There are 6 pie charts on the right which represent water consumption in 6 various places, including North America, South America, Europe, Africa, Central Asia and Southeast Asia. At the bottom, we have been given the key to the charts. The white portion shows the percentage of water for industrial use, the striped portion shows water for agriculture use, and the dark represents domestic use. We now have some basic understanding of the subject in this task. The next stage is to select information. As discussed earlier, we cannot report everything which is given in the charts. There must be some logical selection to fit in the report within the instructed word count. At this stage, our observation will transform into the scrutiny of the data. We need to turn on our meticulous eye now. Try looking for information which stands the highest and the lowest. Also figures which are similar or perhaps too different from each other. You may pause the video here to select such data which you might seem relevant to include in your task 1 response. Alright, now it's time to sort the data which we have selected. Many teachers recommend making 2 bodies in task 1 instead of 1. This allows each body to have a separate theme. Also, it eases up the reader's task. Data can be divided or bifurcated based on entities or items in the chart, or could also be on the basis of similarities or differences. Graphs that have data from multiple years should have time as a theme of their separate body paragraphs. To explain this, however, this given task, maybe you would want to talk about 3 places in body 1 and the other 3 in body 2, or industrial use for all places in body 1 and agriculture and domestic use in body 2. Whichever way you prefer, just make sure it is logical and strengthens the overall progression of your writing. The final stage is the execution stage. It is time to compare and contrast our observations and selections in their respective bodies. Here is a sample body paragraph for this question. Body 1 reads, "It is evident that Central Asia and Africa utilize water majorly for agriculture purposes, spending a staggering 88% and 84% respectively of their total water consumption. Conversely, Europeans spend a mere 32% on the same sector, which is the lowest of all." Body 2 goes, "Moreover, Europe and North America are the only 2 regions consuming water primarily for the industrial use. Central Asia and Africa are the lowest utilizers of water for commercial use, using a nominal 5% and 7% respectively. In the case of putting water to domestic use, South America bags the first place with 19%, whereas in striking contrast, Southeast and Central Asia stands at the lowest position with just 7%. With this, we hope that you got a fair idea of how to frame body paragraphs for task 1 questions effectively. Before we end this video, a few points to remember. Make sure you plan by following all stages before sitting down to write the body. Selections are a must, since irrelevant information is not desired by examiners and could badly affect the task achievement parameter. Body paragraphs must contain the numbers or percentages given in the illustration. Use discourse markers where required. If you haven't watched the video on discourse markers, please do watch it. No ideas or opinions are to be added in the reports. Just write what you see, and yes, within the word limit. Hello viewers and IELTS aspirants, here is yet another useful video as a part of the ongoing IELTS video lesson series. In this video, we are going to learn how to write a conclusion for writing task 2 essay. So let's start. As we know that the essay writing task is a major task that goes on for 40 minutes. The objective here is to write an essay on the given topic. And this layout is now quite familiar to us as we have used it quite a number of times now. We have already learned how to write essay introductions and body paragraphs. If you haven't watched those videos yet, please do. In this video, we are going to shed light on the structure of the conclusion. An important thing to understand here, the structure of the conclusion changes according to the task type. To illustrate, an opinion-based question will have a different written conclusion than an argumentative essay type. But the motive of the conclusion remains the same, which is to summarize the essay. Also in the upcoming videos, we will provide you with a very easy to follow essay format and paragraph structure for each essay question type. So you don't need to worry about varying the structure of the conclusion. In this video, we will take a look at the fundamental layouts of the conclusion. The conclusion paragraph should be written within 35 to 45 words. It should be concise as its name suggests. Here's the basic structure of the conclusion. Every conclusive paragraph should have a linker in the beginning to clearly signal the reader that this is the summary and the essay ends here. The linker helps in signposting and also contributes to the progression of the essay. If you haven't watched the video on linkers and discourse markers, please do watch it. Once we begin with a concluding linker, we can present a summary of the body paragraphs. Perhaps one line from each para would work. It is absolutely optional to present the writer's flavor in the end if the task type has not asked for it. Some teachers recommend it while others don't. It is entirely up to you if you want to add that part. There is no harm in that. A very important point to note here is that the conclusion should be a summary, not too long or carrying too many details. There is no need to copy every single idea presented in the body paragraph. Also, no new ideas are supposed to be added to the conclusion. After all, it is just going to be a much shorter paraphrased version of what has been written earlier. Let's understand the conclusion better with the help of an example. Here is a sample essay question with the topic on the top and the task below. The topic reads, in recent years, work from home culture has become more popular, and the task is to tell the advantages and disadvantages of this trend. To make things easier, let's play the key items against the structure. There are multiple ways to begin a conclusion. You could say to conclude, to summarize, or to recapitulate. There are many more linkers for the same purpose, but remember, a couple of these since we need to write just one conclusion in the IELTS writing exam. The second element requires a 1 or 2 liner summary of ideas picked from body 1 and body 2. Finally, the optional point is the writer's position. Let's write the conclusion with the help of these elements. For those who want to write the conclusions on their own, you will first need to write bodies to pick ideas from. Here for this video, and just for your understanding, we have skipped those stages and jumped on to writing the conclusion. As discussed, first we need to use a concluding linker. We have chosen in conclusion for this task. Now we have body 1 plus body 2 summary, which goes, although working from home allows employees to generate income from the comfort of their homes, it does have drawbacks which might lead to some health and social issues in the future. Now that's the summary. Very concise, to the point, and included all the relevant ideas. It easily helps the reader grab the gist of the entire essay in only a couple of sentences. And this sample is exactly 35 words long. Alright. A few points to remember while writing the conclusion. No new ideas should be presented in the conclusion. Please remember, any ideas which are not a part of any body paragraph should not be introduced in the conclusion. Make sure you answer all parts of the task in this paragraph. If the question has asked for your personal opinion, then it should be presented in the conclusion. The conclusion should be concise and to the point. No illustration, examples or explanations here. Ideas from bodies must be paraphrased. Repetition of language in terms of lexical resources and sentence structures may affect your scores in individual parameters. If you haven't watched the videos on paraphrasing, please do watch it later. And finally, make sure you do not make your conclusion too wordy by adding unnecessary details. Hello everyone, we are back with a new video, and this time we will be talking about IELTS speaking. We will learn how to frame responses for part 3 of the speaking test. So here we start. The IELTS speaking test goes on for 11 to 14 minutes as per Cambridge guidelines. It includes 3 parts. Part 1 is the interview, part 2 is the cue card round, and part 3 is the discussion round. This video will focus on the third part and all it includes. If you haven't watched the videos on the first 2 parts of the test, please do watch them. The discussion round lasts for 4 to 5 minutes only. In this part, the candidates are required to answer questions on a topic which is related to the topic of the previous part. That is part 2. The responses in this part should be detailed and informative. To score well in this part, one must listen actively to the examiner. It is absolutely fine if someone could not understand or hear the question in the first go. They could simply say pardon and the examiner would repeat the question for them. No scores are deducted on this basis. No preparation time is given in this part. Candidates need to respond spontaneously. Thinking quickly on your feet is another vital skill required for the discussion round. The discussion round evaluates the test taker's ability to make speculations, talk about general trends in the present, elicit past experiences, make future predictions, and state opinions. The candidate needs to speak at length, providing relevant reasons along with an example to support their premise. Now let's learn the right structure to answer questions easily in this part. All we need to do is follow OR. O stands for opinion, R stands for reason, and E stands for example. Just answer OR pragmatically and you will automatically end up answering a logically organized response. OR helps in answering all parts of the task easily and with great efficacy. It provides a logical organization to the answer, sequences ideas, and makes speech more coherent than ever. Just state what you believe first and then tell them why you believe so. This is the reason behind your perception. Finally, with the help of an example, show them how it is applicable in the real world. Now let's try answering a sample question using OR. The question reads, do you think people read more nowadays than they used to? As per OR, first we need to state our opinion on this notion followed by reasons and an example. You may pause the video here if you want to try answering this question on your own. Alright, the sample response begins with, in my opinion, people don't prefer reading now as much as they used to do earlier. The opinion ends here. It is clearly told what side of the question we are on. You can have differing opinions as well. Just make sure that they are relevant. In IELTS, it doesn't matter what you think, but how you present what you think matters the most. Now comes reason. There are a number of reasons for that. A busy schedule is the most common excuse people would give today, as it doesn't let them have enough leisure time to read books. Also, with the advent of technology, options for entertainment have become endless. Let's support the response with evidence now. To illustrate, in the olden days, people were fond of reading as there were no other major means of getting entertained. However, now gadgets such as smartphones, gaming consoles, and computers outweigh the fun, non-dynamic activities such as reading can provide. Or actually made it easy to answer all aspects of the question one at a time without missing or forgetting any of those. For linking ideas well and better signposting, here are a few discourse markers that could be used. For stating opinion, we could say, in my opinion, I believe, I reckon, I feel, I think, as far as I know, and so on. Please refrain from using according to me whenever you need to opine, as it is not standard English and therefore incorrect and not acceptable in IELTS. For reasoning, we could use because, due to, since, as, owing to, because of, and so on. And finally, for evidence or example, to explain this, to illustrate, for example, and for instance, can be put into use. Now, a few points to remember while preparing for and answering discussion questions. Ensure that you listen actively. Please do not make assumptions if you could not hear any part of the question well. Just say pardon and the examiner would be happy to repeat the question for you. Answer every aspect of the question. Maintain fluency and coherence. That's the first parameter that decides your overall speaking score. Make sure your ideas are linked logically and are easy to follow. Do not use too many fillers or take a lot of pauses. Practice well before you take the test. And yes, repeating ideas will definitely affect your score. Then comes pronunciation. While practicing, check pronunciation on reliable websites such as Cambridge or Oxford Dictionary. Google is not recommended for IELTS preparation. The third parameter is lexical resources. Try using a variety of vocabulary items in your answer. But as we say, use them because you need them, not because you know them. Too much repetition of lexical items may reflect a lack of expression, so make sure you enhance your word power well before the test. And finally, we have grammar. Try using a variety of sentence structures such as simple, complex, and so on. This would showcase your conversational ability. The usage should be accurate. Practice speaking at length. Many free sample discussion questions are available for practice all over the internet. Once you have worked on all these aspects, you're all set for the speaking test and to get your desired band scores. In conclusion, fewer the errors, the higher a band score is. And remember, practice is the key. Here are a couple of discussion questions for you to try. Answer them on your own now. And don't forget to use OR. Hello and welcome back to our channel. Today we have brought you a video on IELTS Writing Task 2 as a part of our ongoing IELTS video lesson series. And the center of study for this video would be how to write and format an argumentative essay. So let's start. As we know that Writing Task 2, essay writing is the major task in the IELTS writing test, which lasts for 40 minutes. And the objective is crystal clear, as the name suggests, which is to write an essay on the given topic having at least 250 words. But we need to understand that different task types require varying layouts and structures to be answered perfectly. Some essay types might require only 4 paragraphs while some will need 5. Such discrepancy in structure can be a primary cause of confusion among the test takers, so it is necessary to be familiar with the format for each essay question type. Hence, we have brought you this video lesson. In this lesson, we will be learning how to respond to argumentative essay question types. But the first question is, what exactly are argumentative essays? Let's take a look at a sample question to understand them better. Government should spend more money on railways than roadways. Do you agree or disagree? This is an argumentative question type. For ease, you can also call it an agree or disagree essay question. The first thing to do when we come across an essay question is to understand the rubrics. Government should spend more money on railways than roadways is the topic. And our task is to tell the examiner whether we agree with this perception or disagree. Such a question where we simply have to pick one side requires 4 paragraphs. An introduction, 2 bodies and a conclusion at the end. For your convenience, we have mentioned the ideal word count against each paragraph type for this question. Remember, this word count is only applicable to agree-disagree questions. Now it is time to dig in and understand the internal structure of each paragraph to have a decent overall progression in the essay. The introduction will begin with a paraphrase statement. Paraphrasing is rewriting a given statement in a new way, but the meaning remains the same. If you haven't watched the video lesson on paraphrasing, please do. So just paraphrase the topic and the first sentence for the intro would be done. Next, we will write a question reference. This statement answers the task. Or you can say we need to refer to the question to write this statement. In this case, the question is, do you agree or disagree? Just write the response, I agree or disagree with the notion, whatever you believe. And finally comes the thesis statement. This statement sort of gives the reader an overview of the essay. Since the question has asked for our agreement or disagreement, the thesis statement would be, my inclination has been justified in the following paragraphs. Or you could write, my position has been elucidated further. There are many ways to write a thesis statement. Alright, now that is end of the introduction and it should be written within 35 to 45 words. Next is body 1. Here we will write the details and reasons for our agreement or disagreement with the premise. But again, there is a way to do that. We need to start off with a linker such as to begin with or at the outset. They both mean the same. You could use any. Then we state the supporting ideas or reasons. We can include 2 to max 3 supporting ideas in one body paragraph for this question type. Finally, we will close body 1 with an example. This example would help illustrate the last supporting idea we have presented in the body. Make sure the example you give is not personal. It must be generic in nature. Body 1 should have 90 to 110 words. Then comes body 2. The structure is absolutely the same, but linker will change. Since you have already started presenting your arguments in body 1, you can't use it to begin with here. Instead, we could use moreover, in addition to this, besides this, or maybe furthermore to show the continuation of the ideas. The rest of the structure remains the same. And yes, one important note, when we say structure, we mean the format. We don't mean the ideas. Ideas have to be new. We can't repeat ideas or borrow ideas from body 1. Doing this would adversely affect the task response parameter. Body 2 should also have 90 to 110 words. At last, we have a conclusion. It also begins with a linker which signals to sum up. We could use to sum up, to conclude, or to recapitulate if somebody is into fancy words. Then 1 or 2 sentences containing the summary of what was mentioned in body 1 and 2. Make sure you don't repeat the words in the conclusion which were used earlier. The conclusion should have around 30 to 40 words. Now, the theme or main idea of the body paragraphs for this question type would entirely rely on your inclination. For instance, if you agree, then both bodies will talk about agreement since you completely agree with the topic. And the same is true if you disagree. No rocket science here, very simple stuff. Now, it is time to make things more interesting. Let us introduce you to another kind of argumentative essay question. As you can see here, the topic is the same, but the task has slightly changed. Now it says to what extent. Do you agree or disagree? The question doesn't demand a full agreement or disagreement, but rather need us to pick a side partially. This essay question type is a little tricky. Such a question would need 5 paragraphs to be answered, and the word count for each individual paragraph has been projected for your reference. Now, let's take a look at the changes which to what extent has introduced to the internal structure of paragraphs. When the question changes to what extent, there would obviously be a change in the introduction, especially the question reference statement. Now we need to write, I agree or disagree to a large extent, or I partially agree or disagree. Rest remains the same. Now, if you partially agree with the notion here, the first 2 body paragraphs will talk about your side, but the third body will contain ideas from the opposite view. Body 1 and 2 will be in disagreement and body 3 will be in agreement. Since body 1 and 2 do not show major changes, let's learn the internal structure of body 3. Linker for this body will be used to show contradiction. We can use however, although, on the contrary, and so on. The rest of the structure remains the same. In the case of conclusion, now we would be acknowledging body 3 as well. So the statements would be a summary of body 1, body 2 and body 3. No other changes are needed here. Alright. So that's how we format an argumentative essay depending on its task. Active reading is the key here. If one misreads the question, the whole response could be framed incorrectly. Also, practice is the key, like we always say. Practice writing using the layouts learned today and soon essays will not be a problem. You can try writing a response to the sample question using the format we learned today, and please don't forget to share your response in the comment section. Hello everyone, here we are with more useful content, this time to help you with IELTS writing as a part of the ongoing IELTS video lesson series. In today's video, we will learn about the layout and structure of discuss views and give opinion essay type. So let's start. The IELTS writing module goes on for 60 minutes, out of which 40 minutes are provided for writing task 2, that is essay writing. The objective is very clear and straight, which is to write an essay on the given topic. No prior information or special knowledge is required to write essays as the topics are generic in nature. The number of paragraphs vary according to the essay question type. Some essay questions can be answered fully in 4 paragraphs, while some require 5 to be answered completely and sufficiently. Let's take a look at such an essay question type. In the previous video, we learned how to respond to argumentative or agree-disagree essay questions. This video's primary focus would be learning how to write discuss views and give opinion essays. Here is a sample question. Some people say that museums should be free of charge for the public while others oppose. So in the topic statement, we have opposite premises. A group of individuals believe that museums should have no entry fee, whereas the other side says that the people should be paying to get into museums. In other words, according to the second group of people, entry fee should not be waived off. So 2 different ideas are given in the topic, and the task is to discuss both the views by presenting relevant arguments and explanations. Also, we need to state our opinion. It is very important to cater to each demand of the task to score well in the task response parameter and eventually in the writing module. If someone does the task without missing out any aspect of the question, scoring a band 7 does not remain a challenge. Hence, reading the question carefully is undoubtedly quite crucial. Now let's take a look at the format and writing style. For this type of question, 4 paragraphs would suffice. The layout comprises an impressive introduction followed by 2 body or content paragraphs, body 1 and body 2, and finally culminating with a strong conclusion. The word count for this question type is here for your reference. The introduction and conclusion should be written within 35 to 45 words each, while the body paragraphs should not contain less than 90 words to fulfill the total word count of the essay. Alright, now it's time to understand the constituents of each paragraph in the layout. In the introduction paragraph, two elements need to be included: the paraphrased version of the topic statement and the thesis statement. Please note that there will be no question reference statement for this type of question. To begin this paragraph, just rewrite the topic in the question box in a different way, but at the same time making sure its meaning doesn't change. Then the thesis statement will provide an outline of the essay. An example has been given here for your reference. Before stating my position, both the views have been elucidated. You could write this statement in any way you want. Then comes body 1. Now, interesting thing to note here is that body 1 will only talk about view 1 given in the question, and view 1 belongs to the people who support the idea of free entry to the public in museums. An important note to remember: contradicting views or ideas should not be discussed in the same paragraph, as this weakens the structural integrity and progression of the para and essay. So in short, one paragraph equals one central idea. Now, let's focus on the layout of body 1. It has 4 elements: topic sentence, linker, supporting ideas, and an example. The body paragraph commences with a topic sentence such as: some people assert or argue that museums should allow visitors without any charge. Then a linker such as most importantly is added to indicate the beginning of supporting ideas. The supporting ideas are the reasons or main points which back up the main idea. At least 2 or maximum 3 supporting ideas should be added in each body paragraph. The paragraph then ends with unequivocal evidence which elaborates and explains the last supporting idea. This format maintains coherence and establishes progression in the internal structuring of the paragraph. Remember, this paragraph should be written within 90 to 110 words. Next comes body 2. It should also contain the elements as in body 1, except for the fact that this body will begin with a linker such as however, on the contrary, or on the other hand, since the opposite view is going to be the central idea of this body paragraph. After the linker, the topic sentence will be presented, followed by 2 to 3 supporting ideas and an example. The word count for this paragraph will be the same as the previous body within 90 to 110 words. Finally, it's time to write the conclusion. The conclusion consists of only 2 parts: a concluding linker and our opinion. Linkers such as to sum up, to conclude, to recapitulate, or to summarize work perfectly. For the opinion, you could agree with one of the views presented above, but make sure you don't make it look like an agreement. Just frame the view in a way that appears to be your original opinion. Your opinion could also be a mixture of the views stated above. Whichever way you choose, just make sure your opinion is easy to follow and contains relevant ideas. Also, since conclusions are meant to be concise, ensure that your opinion doesn't take more than 40 to 45 words. Exceeding the word count by a big margin could affect the overall band score. Here is a quick overview of what we have learned so far. 4 paragraphs, intro as suggested. View 1 and view 2 are explained in bodies 1 and 2 respectively, and our opinion goes in the conclusion. This question type could also be asked a bit differently. Now here is how that can happen. The question topic reads: some people believe that museums should be free of charge for the public. Here, unlike the previous topic, only one view has been given, and the objective is to discuss the view and state our opinion. The word count distribution will not see a change, however, the layout will. Introduction and conclusion will remain the same. In this case, body 1 will talk about the only view given, and body 2 will illustrate our personal thoughts on the topic, and the conclusion will be a brief amalgamation of body 1 and 2. Body 1 structure remains the same as previously illustrated. Body 2, however, will begin using opinion stating discourse markers such as "in my opinion" or "I personally believe that." These signposting words clearly indicate that central idea consists of the writer's own opinion on the matter. Then, as usual, the main idea will be followed by 2 to 3 supporting ideas and an example to illustrate them. Hope you understood the layout of discuss views and give your opinion essay structures. Feel free to share your responses using the layout we learned for the same question in the comment section. Hello everyone, in today's video we are going to help you with the layout of question-based essay questions. So let's start. Writing task 2 is the major task in IELTS writing which goes on for 40 minutes. The objective is to write an essay in not less than 250 words on a given topic. The format of the essay along with the number of paragraphs it includes depends on the type of task in the question. Some essay types may require only 4 paragraphs while some may be answered fully in 5 paragraphs. In this video, we are going to understand the layout of question-based essay questions. Here is a sample essay question to guide us. The question reads, nowadays people are not interested in reading books as they used to be. This is the topic. Here the present reading habit of the general public has been compared to that in the past. Now our task is to answer the 2 questions asked below. Why is this so? In other words, the task demands the reasons for this trend where people have reduced or stopped reading books. The second question goes, how can people be encouraged to read more? The task clearly wants us to list some effective solutions to fix the problem. Since we have multiple questions here to answer in this task, this question type is called question-based. Such a question type requires 4 paragraphs to be answered pragmatically. Beginning of course with an intro, followed by 2 body or content paragraphs and culminating with a conclusion. Here is a word count distribution for this task to give you a fair idea. Now let's dig into each paragraph type and understand its internal structuring. The introduction consists of 3 elements. Paraphrase statement, where we just need to rewrite the topic in a new way without distorting its overall meaning. Then we include the question reference statement. So refer to the task when you need to write this statement. It basically answers the question in the task in a sentence. For instance, in this case, the question reference could be, there are many reasons for this negative trend, but fortunately, with the help of some effective measures, people can be motivated to read. Finally, we write the thesis statement to close this paragraph. The thesis statement is nothing more than the outline of the essay. For this particular question, we can write, both aspects are discussed pragmatically in the following paragraphs. This is just an example. You can modify or write the thesis statement as you please. Just make sure it announces the ideas covered in the essay. Moving on to body 1. Body 1 will answer the first question in the task. Here we can talk about the reasons for the trend mentioned in the question. Body 1 has 3 elements. Linker, 2 to 3 supporting ideas, followed by an example. To begin with, at the outset, to commence with, etc. can be used as a linker. Then we need to mention the reasons behind the trend, as why do people are not interested in reading anymore. At least 2 and maximum 3 relevant reasons are to be mentioned here. In the end, a piece of evidence to show how our arguments stay practical in the real world. Ensure that the examples you give is generic in nature. It must not be a personal example, as doing that would affect the overall register and tone of your essay. The word count for this paragraph should not be less than 90 or more than 110. Similarly, body 2 will be structured in the same fashion. It will cater to the demands of the second question in the task, which is, what can be done to solve this problem? So we need to suggest a couple of effective solutions in this paragraph. But before solutions, we need a linker to begin our paragraph. For body 2, the linker could be, fortunately, however, or even a statement such as, with the help of some proper measures and so on. Then a couple of steps or advice which could help people generate interest in reading are to be written. Idea generation and proper planning lays the foundation and decide how relevant the supporting ideas are going to be. Then an example to illustrate the last supporting idea has to be presented. The word count for this body paragraph should also be limited to 110 words only. The last paragraph, the conclusion, will contain only 2 elements and will be quite concise. Starting with a concluding linker such as to sum up, to conclude, or to recapitulate, and ending the paragraph and essay with a 1 or 2 liner summary of body 1 and body 2 would perfectly close the write-up. In a nutshell, these are the central ideas of the paragraphs for this question. Now, let's analyze another such question to understand the rubrics and format better. Here the question topic is the same, that people these days are not as interested as they used to be, but the task is slightly changed. The first question is same although, ask for the reason for this trend. The second question asks for the effects of such doings. The question goes, what are the consequences of this trend? So now, instead of solutions, effects or repercussions need to be pointed out and explained. Again, only 4 paragraphs for this question as well. The word count distribution is on your screen for your reference. No changes here too. The only thing which will change for this question is body 2's central idea. This time, effects and consequences of the trend will be elucidated in the paragraph. The word count should not exceed 110. Hope you understood the format and will use it for this task type. You could try writing the same question and feel free to share your response in the comments box. Hello everyone, we are here again with yet another exciting video lesson for you as a part of the ongoing IELTS video series. Hope you are following our course. If you are, then do let us know in the comment section. In the previous video, we learned how to write question-based essay questions. If you haven't watched that, please do watch it later. In today's video, we will learn the format for writing advantages and disadvantages essay type. So here we go. The academic writing module goes on for 60 minutes, out of which 40 minutes are provided for the writing task 2, that is essay writing. The objective is very clear and straight, which is to write an essay on the given topic. No prior information or special knowledge is required to write essays as the topics are generic in nature. The number of paragraphs vary according to the essay question type. Some essay questions can be answered fully in 4 paragraphs, while some require 5 to be answered completely and pragmatically. Let's take a look at such an essay question type. Today's video will mainly focus on how to respond to advantages and disadvantages essay questions in the exam. Let's take an example to understand the rubrics first. The topic in the question reads, in today's world, a lot of people prefer shopping online. A quite generic statement about the prevalent trends, and our task is to discuss the advantages and disadvantages of shopping online. As simple as that. Such essay question types do not take more than 4 paragraphs to be answered, beginning with an introduction, followed by 2 body or content paragraphs, and finally summing up with a to-the-point conclusion. The word count distribution would be 35 to 45 words for the first para, 90 to 110 for each body paragraph, as these paragraphs would contain the advantages and disadvantages, so we need space for that many details and sentences. And finally, a short paragraph concluding the essay would be written in not more than 40 words. If you follow each paragraph's word count ardently, your essay will not have more than 250 words. Also, make sure you do not exceed 290 to 300. That would be too many. Alright, now it's time to delve into each paragraph's internal sentence by sentence structure. The introduction for this question type would contain the 3 elements like the other task types. For the first sentence, just rewrite the topic statement in the question and you're done. For the second sentence, which is question reference, refer back to the question and check the task. Now, according to the task type, the question reference would be, there are a number of benefits and drawbacks of this fashion. You could write the statement in other ways too as you like. Then we will close the introduction with a thesis statement that briefly tells what is discussed in the following paragraph. For this question, the thesis statement is, both the aspects are discussed in the following paragraphs. That's the end of the first paragraph. Then we move on to one of the biggest paragraph, that is body 1. Here we will include the details. Body 1 will talk only about the advantages of this trend. You could list 2 to 3 advantages. Please don't discuss too many as that would make the body too wordy and you won't have many words count balance for the next 2 paragraphs. Practicing and writing essays for some time will give you a fair idea of the word count without even manually counting the words. Body 1 begins with a linker as stated here. Examples are to begin with, at the outset, to commence with, and so on. Then we mention the pros of this trend. Please make sure they are relevant and not too complicated to understand. In the end, present a piece of evidence to support the last advantage you mentioned. This would ensure logical progression within your paragraphs, contributing to evidence coherence in your writing. subsequent paragraph, body 2, is no different from body 1 except its central idea. The gist of body 2 will be the cons of the trend mentioned in the question. So it says, shopping online is disadvantageous and here are the drawbacks. In addition to this, linkers will change to contradicting ones such as however, on the contrary, or on the flip side. Rest, the entire structure remains the same. Finally, we will have the conclusion for the essay. This conclusion is nothing different than the ones we wrote for the other essay question types we looked at in the previous video. It consists of a concluding linker and a 1 or 2 liner summary of body 1 and body 2, and that would be all. Here is a quick look at how we formatted and organized this essay. The advantages and disadvantages essay type can also be asked in a little varied way. For example, the question presented on your screen. The topic in the question is same as the previous one, but the task type changes slightly. Now, it wants us to tell if the advantages outweigh the disadvantages of this trend. It doesn't only want us to list the pros and cons, but also to show that one is more than the other. For such essay questions, the task response parameter really takes our test. Since we as test takers should be able to demonstrate and prove by the end of our writing that one aspect is more than the other. So how do we do it? Well, here is how. First of all, we are going to make 5 paragraphs for this task type. An intro, 3 body paragraphs and a conclusion. Since we are writing 5 paragraphs instead of 4, the word count distribution will change. Now each body paragraph must be concluded in 60 to 65 words, not more than that. This means that this number of supporting ideas in each paragraph will also drop to just 2 per paragraph. For the introduction, the layout remains unchanged. And yes, the question reference will be stated as per the task in the question. Here is an example for you on the screen. You could go with this or you could write your own. Just make sure it answers the question briefly without disclosing any details in the first paragraph. Now, here is the catch. Logical organization and distribution of ideas will depend on which side you take. For instance, if you say that there are more advantages than disadvantages, then the body 1 and body 2 will talk about advantages and only body 3 will contain disadvantages. Such an unequal distribution and arrangement of ideas clearly shows that we have one more than the other. Likewise, if we believe that disadvantages outweigh the advantages, the layout will turn and be the exact opposite of the first one. So now, 2 bodies for disadvantages and only 1 for advantages. Here is an inside look on how the body 3 can be framed. Since body 3 in any case will include the opposite idea, it should begin with a contradicting linker, such as however, although, on the contrary, and so on. Rest, it's no different. To conclude the essay, don't forget to use a concluding linker, followed by 1 or 2 statements which summarize all the 3 bodies and noticeably show that body 1 and body 2 are stronger than the last body. This layout and structure of the essay will certainly help you score well or better than before. If you decide to write and practice this task type, please feel free to share your response in the comment section. Hello everyone, we have brought you the final video of the IELTS video lesson series. In this video, we will learn a few do's and don'ts for all 4 skill sets. So let's start. We are going to focus on things to remember when we are at the examination center for all 4 tests. Firstly, let's take a look at what exactly to do during the listening exam. To begin with, you won't be allowed to carry your own earpiece to the exam center. Headphones will be provided to you a few minutes before the test begins. Make sure your headphone works fine and the recording is clearly audible to you. Try adjusting the volume using the volume knob on the headphone if the audio is low. If the volume doesn't fix the problem, don't waste even a second to let the invigilator know about the issue. Waiting till you find real difficulty listening to the audio when you're already halfway through the test will only create more problems for you, since the audio cannot be played again. Then, in any case, do not leave any questions unattempted. There is no negative marking in the IELTS listening assessment. So for instance, if the question is a matching one, that still gives you a fair probability to get the answer correct. Play smart. Before you listen to the audio, you must read the questions in the time given and also the title of the conversation. This way, you will be able to predict for what is going to be there in the audio. Such practices enhance your chances to get more correct answers. Moreover, Certain questions, especially gap filling ones, have a fixed word count mentioned in the instructions. Make sure you abide by the word count or your answer will not stand correct. Be very careful with the spelling. Remember, if the spellings are incorrect, the answer goes incorrect. And finally, follow either British English or American English. Don't create a mixture in your answer sheet. Now it's time to know the don'ts during the listening test. Please do not rush to transfer your answers into the answer sheet when the audio is still being played. This will only result in you missing some crucial parts of the recording which could potentially contain the responses to the next few questions. Remember, you will be given sufficient time later to do that. Then please concentrate on just one question at a time as you listen to the conversation. Although there will not be a number of distractions at the exam center, still some of us find it difficult to focus, especially when we are out. To make sure this doesn't happen during the test, practice several times before you take the test. And once again, please follow the instructions in the gap filling questions especially. Do not use numbers if that isn't mentioned in the question. To illustrate, if 15 is the answer, it should be written in the word form, not numeric form, unless numbers are allowed. Now it's time to move on to the reading module. So what we must do during the reading test? Firstly, like the listening test, we are not going to leave any space blank. All questions must be answered. Before you delve into the details and content of the passage, read the title first. This will provide you with a decent idea of the central idea of the text. You could highlight or underline the keywords in question using a pencil to make your task easier. Reading techniques such as skimming or scanning must be used to work efficiently and for better time management. Please ensure that you read the questions first, not the passage. Be mindful of the time even when you are practicing. This is the best way to manage time better. Do not wait for the entire test to be over. Transfer answers at the end of every passage and be on the safe side. Next is what practices to avoid during the reading test. Reading the passage first will only lead to a waste of time, since there could be no aim for reading without knowing the questions. Next, do not read the full passage. Remember, reading is not about reading everything, but about being able to comprehend written text and answer the questions. Nobody is going to check whether you read everything or not. Your total scores will decide your bat. Then, do not spend way too much time on a single passage. If you can't find the answer to any question within 45 seconds, better skip it and try to redo it later when you're done transferring. Concentrate on one question at a time. And last, please do not write true or false for yes or no questions or vice versa. They will be marked wrong without any consideration. Time to know what to keep in mind during the writing task. Answer all parts of the question if you want to ace the task response parameter. Leaving any part unattended will only lower your overall scores. Make sure your paragraphs are easy to distinguish in terms of formatting and alignment, and also central ideas wise. Use a good range of grammatical sentence structure to display your level of language. Apart from this, arguments should also be justified and reasonable in the content paragraphs. For maintaining the desired word count, make sure you do not write less than 250 or exceed 300. That would otherwise be too much. Punctuation marks such as commas, full stops and semicolons should be right in place, along with a capitalization where required. Always keep an eye on the clock when you're practicing writing. This will assist you with proper time management skills. And always plan before you write. Here are a few don'ts for the IELTS writing test. Please do not copy full statements from the question. That will not help increase your band scores in any way, since you did not produce that language. Always make selections and report only unique features in the report writing task. Avoid talking about everything. Next, spelling errors are in fact the silliest way to lose marks in writing. For every 4 spelling errors, a half band is deducted. So you can now imagine the damage wrong spellings can do to your scores. Use synonyms or similar words to refrain from repeating the same vocabulary items. points. The essay and report must be in paragraph and passage form. No sort of list or bullet points are accepted. Never make assumptions on the basis of what the data reflects in the report writing task. Just write what you see in the illustration. Overuse of linking words or discourse markers can also affect our overall scores badly. So use them in a controlled and regulated way. And again, keep an eye on the clock as and when you sit down to practice. Last but not the least, the speaking test. Here is a list of what to do practices for this test. Always listen actively to the examiner so that you don't miss on any vital information on the question. And it's okay if you were not able to understand or hear any chunk of the question, you could politely ask the examiner to repeat themselves. Just say pardon and the job will be done. Don't forget to provide a reason for every response you give, even when the examiner doesn't ask why. For part 2, the cue card round, make good use of the preparation time and prepare keynotes. Test takers are allowed to refer to the keynotes as they speak. No scores will be deducted for that. Just make sure you answer all parts of the cue card, leaving none behind. Always elaborate on your responses in the final part, that is the discussion. And most importantly, display a good variety of sentence structures and lexical resources in your speech. Now, what not to do during the speaking assessment. Never memorize any answers or paragraphs on any topic. This can lead to negative markings in the test. Remember, the IELTS speaking examiners are specially trained to spot any memorized fragments in the speech. So better be spontaneous and natural. Do not take too many pauses or use too many fillers. This shows a lack of flow and will eventually get yourself marked down in the fluency and coherence parameters. Always use a word when it is needed, not because you know it. Some people in actuality try to forcefully fit in a fancy word to give an impression that they have a respectable level of language, but often it backfires. So never do that unless you are quite sure of its usage. And at last, ignore the recorder placed on the examiner's table. It's not for you. Alright, so that's it. These tips will surely help you score better than ever. Do write to us in the comments section on how you found them. Also, we really hope you enjoyed learning with our IELTS video lesson series and found the content helpful. We wish you all the best for the test. Thank you for watching.